Wait, 1 second. AverageJonas!
Why is it so hard? Why do I need to literally sleep with the president to get a watch party?
We can always we can always just like arm wrestle or something, Mitch. But I don't think I have a low enough table.
That one actually came out of left field for me because I thought you were just going to flex on the guy. But...
All right, fine. What the do you do with a KO on CT side? It's literally a useless hero.
Welcome back, everybody, to Valoranting. It's the week of what? The 26th. I guess we start from Sunday, so the 25th of July. Great to have you all here because we are in the thick of qualifications for Berlin. That's right. Challenges 2 for Stage 3 has been kicking off around the globe, so we'll be discussing that. I'm here with Van Silly and Mitchman, both in beanies. Are you both cold? What's going on?
You know what?
Miss the memo?
Dude, here's the thing. So our first show together with Mitchman, we actually coordinated that we're going to wear bathrobes, but this time I was like, it's early in the morning for me, quote unquote. I didn't feel like doing my hair. My hats were like far away. I found my space station hat, decided to wear it. I didn't know this motherfucker was going to wear one too.
I gotta say, I never do my hair, so it's not really an excuse for me, but I had to rep my boys, you know, qualifying all the way through. I'm feeling good about Alliance these days.
Sorry, yeah, Mitch has been pretty tight-lipped about Alliance over the last couple of weeks. He's even maybe requested that we avoid the topic entirely, but now we'll have a chance to
now we can talk
about that roster. Vance, like, you got some drippy threads there, Vance.
I was gonna say, like, Mitch was color coordinated with his beanie and his Mickey Mouse with some green on it. I went all black, but just to have a little bit of contrast in color, we added a bit of yellow. So we're going with the with the whole Uber shouts.
Oh,
so the yellow, this is to match with my skin tone. The black is to match with my beanie. We're good to go.
Oh, Vance, size cold, baby. Let's go, dude. Ubermerch.gg, you can get your own. All right, so yeah, plenty to talk about on the show today. Let's get started. Let's give you a bit of a taste to what we're going to be going over today. First of all, we're going to be talking about a sort of a collection of grievous injuries that many of our brave pro players have suffered over the last few months. Some of them actually kind of serious and affecting their careers. Maybe some not so much. We can discuss that a little bit later on. Still, we know a couple of players are struggling a little bit with the wrist. So look after them, ladies and gentlemen. Then we're going to talk about VCT EU. Mitch is here as well, but we're going to be talking to... So, you know when you make a character selection screen, you get like 12 trait points, right, to put into character? Yeah, there's a glitch, and Jonas had 24. He had like double the amount of character creation points, and they all went into charisma still. So that's crazy. We're going to get to talk to him later on, though, which is going to be great. Obviously, one of the biggest content creators in general in Europe right now and a huge part of the Valorant scene. So really interested to pick his brain. He's also been an analyst on Valorant events before. Really great guy, very talented individual. Following that, we'll talk about VCT NA, who's another gigantic brain. We're going to get Dream back on the show, which is always great to have him here. And we'll chop it up with him a little bit and talk about what's happening over in the NA region right now. We've got some upsets to discuss, and we've got a few teams whose prospects are now looking in doubt heading towards Berlin. We'll be covering all of the VCT NA action as well. Expect this to be a pretty lengthy show as we'll spend enough time, I think, on both regions. But first things first, you guys see this tweet here. This now... I'm not a pro player, by not even remotely close, right? But I was surprised to see this tweet from JCStani. He tweets that he can't play on this sort of ping anymore. The 60 to 70 ping that he needs to move. It's kind of wild, right? It is a little high, I suppose, but coming from Australia, like these were very normal amounts of ping to deal with, especially as like a South Aussie.
Yeah.
How bad is this really?
Honestly, for me, back in my old days, playing at 250 ping against 100 ping is not an issue. But these days, I guess it's a little bit more. I guess if you're talking about like where you are in the Southeast region and Oceanic region, 70 ping is like the norm, and it's okay if everybody has that ping. I think the tweet coming out from JCStani was probably when they lost to, was it TSM, right? And that ping difference in between regions in North America seems to be a hefty difference as well because of Peaker's advantage, of course, for these online games. So it does play a huge factor into it so far for a lot of these teams. So
do you remember this? I went to the Riot campus actually to test this with a bunch of influencers, and I asked, what do you think about Peaker's advantage?
They said it was non-existent.
They literally told me they didn't think there was Peaker's advantage in their game. That's not true, right? That's not true, right?
I mean, it's definitely not true. We'll have a little bit later on what Hiko is saying too. But let's take, for example, the whole hiatus of like the delay that we had, about like an hour delay for the 100 Thieves matchup during the Masters, if I'm not mistaken, right? And it took a while because they were trying to find the right server to play in and whatnot for 100 Thieves. And the same thing goes into the matchup again of TSM versus Andbox, was that Yacer was a demon playing with an 8 ping versus everybody else of TSM that were like in the 50s or whatnot. So that was also an advantage at that point too. If everybody had the same amount of ping overall across the board, then it's kind of fair. But when you have one or two players that has that advantage in terms of the peakers advantage, then of course they'll excel more in the server.
If anything, this just makes me feel like LAN needs to come, and soon. Obviously, there's some Delta variant going around right now, so maybe I don't expect that to be happening this year. But you know, even in Berlin's case, you expect to see the playing field even a little bit. The problem is that you got to qualify on ping, so not surprised to hear people sort of say they have to move. But like, America's a big country. Moving across the country now, maybe if you're a gamer and you just sort of pack, you know, one pair of socks, one pair of underwear, 5 different shirts, and your
just
PC,
like a gamer.
then maybe you don't worry about pants. You're playing. Maybe that's not as big a deal, but it's quite a large move regardless. I think it's like that. And also we dealt with this controversy with 100 Thieves, with like how they select their server as well, in terms of Mike's is saying it in chat, right? They'd rather everyone have bad ping because of one person versus the one person just having to deal with shit ping, so they try and like even it out. In fairness, this is also what they do in the Overwatch League. We have people that actually have to play from Europe sometimes. Paris and London's teams, I think, are based in Europe, ironically. And there's a tool that normalizes ping to the highest ping person, I think. So everybody is playing on an even playing field. But like, you could be playing in NA, technically on an NA server, but it normalizes the ping to like 80 for everyone. So kind of brutal. All right, we'll talk about that in a second. But this should interest both of you, I think, as Counter-Strike fans and previous casters of the title, is that JW's kind of hinted that like a Valorant move is possible. If you don't know JW, you missed the golden era of Counter-Strike, I think, in my opinion. But this is an announcement. Obviously, JW sort of mentioning that he's sort of moving on. I think that he was with Fnatic for a long time, like a lot longer than you really expect pro players to stay with an org, to be fair. I feel like every CS guy does this. They're like, oh, I'm gonna see what's up next. Could be CS, might be Valorant, or anything else, but it has to be Valorant specifically mentioned next to CS to get those talent scouts looking and start to get those numbers ticking up on the contract.
You know, I reckon this guy's network is actually pretty bad right now. Like, okay, he's JW, so he can pretty much go to anybody and go, hey, I want to be on your team, and they're gonna consider it. But he's been on that Fnatic squad for what? I think it's like 4 years or coming up to in total, which is pretty crazy. You know, in that sense, I find it hard to imagine that he's gonna have networked that much from players who bounce around rosters. They'll know a lot more people. At the same time, he's so fucking skilled. And this guy is gonna, if he wants to play in Valorant, he'll have a team in a week, in a day, probably. And I think that putting that out there, the way you're saying, like, you know, a lot of the players, they'll put out Valorant, they'll put out CS. First of all, it's going to get more interactions on your tweet, because there's going to be all those diehard CS fans that are like, please don't go, please don't go. Boom. Free interactions that otherwise they might not have went for. Secondly, it also just tells people out there like, hey, I've got a lot of fucking offers coming in. Like, I'll go wherever I want to. And if you get, even if you're not interested in going to Valorant, if you get those offers in from Valorant squads, that's automatic leverage for whatever CS squad or whatever other career you want to go into monetarily. So I think it makes a lot of sense chucking it in. I would fucking love to see JW come over to Valorant though, because you know, like, sure, he's kind of tapered off coming towards the end of his CS career or coming towards more recent times, but Valorant's a real refreshing thing. How many pros have we seen come in from other games where they've started to decline in CS and then boom, they bounce right back in Valorant to the top of their game? Guys that have never even performed in CS, that have always been on those tier 3 rosters. Look at Fnatic for the most part. Now they're bouncing up and being amazing in Valorant. So it would be a sight to see if we got JW over. I want that.
I feel like we see way more success from like tier 2, tier 3 CS players coming to Valorant than tier 1 CS players coming to Valorant. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, existence of situation is different. We can talk about that, but like, I mean, automatic, I guess you could say. Kusta, you know, is on Gen G, I think, are middling, right? I think they're still.
I
looking
guess
for
the
those
biggest
big
examples
results.
you could have that are still in their prime that made the switch are Ethan and Nitro, and from CS into this, and they're doing.
You didn't say
pretty
Hiko.
much.
Why?
Well, I mean, I mean, you know, yeah, that's that. I'm left without words for that one. But I wonder, at the same time, would this be like a strategy that NBK is also doing right now, right? In terms of like, hey, I'm streaming now. I'm trying to get into Valorant. I'm not going to join a team right now. I'm just going to stream a bunch and see how it goes. But with that, who knows if he's still having talks of like opportunities to still play in like a CS team or opportunities to play into a top team in Valorant. I think right now he's in. I feel for both NBK and JW, they're in an area where they can maybe join a high tier 2 team, maybe in the scene for Counter-Strike, and try to excel that back up, and maybe they find a driving into Counter-Strike that way. Or, just as Mitchman was saying, if they make the switch into Valorant and everything's going well, and they're playing that, because again, mechanically speaking, it's a little bit easier in Valorant than it is mechanically speaking in CS. Let's face the facts in that too.
Sure.
So that if they're able to find like better aim control or whatever in Valorant, then maybe they could actually sell it a top team in Valorant as well.
I think you notice as well, within most of the rosters in EU, at least within the top, so let's take the top 4 teams, you've only got like 3 former tier 1 pros, like Mixwell, you've got Angel from FPX, and these guys are not supported by 4 other CS pros, right? It is young guns. This is a young man's game when it comes to Valorant. And I think the fact that you have to keep on your toes for someone that came from CS to come to Valorant, even from a casting perspective, the amount of extra effort that has to go into the game. And from working with Alliance, I can tell you that keeping up to date with meta is a pain in the ass. So
Sure.
I'm keeping ahead of the meta even more so. So I think that's something that it's almost like some people will shy away from it because they won't be able to live up to the challenge. Some people don't like the shifting meta, but it is very much a challenge. And sometimes that can really activate you more than anything. There's been a bunch of really talented CS players at the tier 2 level that have kind of tapered off because they just get bored with the game. Like back in my day, at least, when it was the same game for 10 years running, with the exception of some pretty shit updates. It's actually a worse game than it was when I started playing it, or at least it was back then. People got bored of the game. Whereas in Valorant, good luck getting bored of this. Every 2 months, you got to reinvent.
You don't have time to get bored because you're too busy trying to figure out like what to play in the meta. You know what I mean? Especially like in the lead up to Iceland. Look how much it hurt some of our LATAM teams not really having their finger on the pulse of the best way to play. And they admitted that. I think we interviewed Sassy there, or we got an interview from him, and he's like, I mean, we're just going to have to play our style now and see how it works out because we didn't read this meta in the same way as everyone else. We didn't really have a chance to practice this post-plant stuff. So, and then they tried to play it anyway and got pooed on. So, yeah, you really have to keep up. It's a very quickly evolving game, which means that, those that are coaching, that are, working on strategy, that are implementing that in teams are really earning their keep. They really have to. It's exhausting. It also means you don't get a lot of rest. So these off-season periods are pretty important, even in this sort of, I don't know, this early time frame of Valorant. Hey, we mentioned Hiko earlier on. Ben said he refused to put him in the bracket of the pros that were thriving. It seems like 100 Thieves are also thinking along the same lines of JCStani because they are based on the West Coast right now. And I think this came up. This was an issue during what? I mean, shit, it was the last qualifiers, right? It was stage 2 challenges, I think, where we had that whole kerfuffle with their coach being a twat lord and them sort of delaying a match. Hear from Hiko, because he kind of hints at a bit of a relocation, maybe only temporarily, but give it a listen.
Genuine?
Yeah, genuinely, 100%.
Do you know what 100 Thieves are playing match? Not until August, middle August.
Not here on.
We'll be going to Texas for a couple weeks, I think.
I'm gonna play fucking.
Yeah, so I mean, they obviously not playing till mid-August because they've already qualified.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they've qualified to the NA regionals, right?
Yeah,
so
the regional finals.
Exactly. So for a few weeks, what's going to happen is that they want to play in Texas. They're relocating the whole team. I think they're going to be playing at the Complexity compound and I think that's in Arlington, Texas, right? So it's not like the whole 100 Thieves compound is moving from LA to Texas.
No,
that's not
it's
happen.
temporary.
And that's the reason why. It's because, when you want to have that land setting for the team and you want to get that camaraderie, the teamwork, and like being in person with your team, then playing in a Texas server seems to make more sense. Well, not necessarily a Texas server, but a Texas central location.
They could play on Illinois, and they could still not have shite ping. I think that was the fucking problem, is that they wanted like
that's
Texas server, and they got and they ended up getting points. So they can play Texas or Illinois servers and sort of be fun. There's also, I think, are XSET not based there as well in Texas? Because I feel like they were on Backchat in person. I think that it was like anyway, I think there are a few rosters that might be.
I know Sentinels are. That's when they were at Backchat in person with Shazam and Dapper, and that's the thing, right? Envy's also there. And the issue is not them as 100 Thieves playing from the compound versus central teams or teams that are based in Texas. It's more them having to play with players that are basically playing from the East Coast, for example. If it's going to be a West Coast, East Coast battle, then that's where the discrepancy kind of happens, because you may have one player that's more central. They have a ping advantage. The other ones are East Coast. So they're like, okay, well, we have to play in a central server. So then that means the players that are in a central server will have an advantage. And again, to go back to that example, I think it's 100 Thieves versus Immortals where that happened because of shot ups ping, right? If I'm not mistaken, that was the issue back then. So I think it does make sense now that everybody's like, going into a centralized mecca of like, or it's Vegas, or it's Texas, or it's whatnot. And I think teams realize that having a more central location for the team in Texas allows you to play in the East Coast servers if it's a full team that you're playing against in the East Coast. West Coast, same thing, and even of course now in the central area. So I think this is a good plus for 100 Thieves. If it comes down to a ping issue again, then I think at that point you could run out of that excuse now for 100 Thieves if they don't qualify because of the whole ping thing again.
Yeah, I don't think they want to leave anything up to chance. It makes sense. Lord Lexus asks in chat, like, it's a fair question. How come Sentinels and XSET have apartments and a house team, but other orgs let their players play on shitty ping? The thing is that the 100 Thieves compound existed before 100 Thieves Valorant did. You know what I mean? Like they already pay a fuck ton of money on that place, I'm sure. Their partnership with Cash App probably helps a lot, but if the facilities exist, first of all, it's easy to make content with them, so that 100 Thieves have like a really robust content offering with like the heist and a bunch of other shows that they do. So having all of their players in the same place is really good. Plus it gives an opportunity for a lot of crossover and cross-pollination between their players. Mm-hmm. And to be fair, like it's a bit tough for West Coast players considering it's like SoCal, NorCal, and then Texas, right? There's no intermediate, like there's no Denver or Vegas or
like Georgia, maybe another one, but yeah, they need to add to Colorado and stuff like that.
Arizona, like there's no sort of middle ground there, and I think that's probably just an issue of them just sort of filling out a bit more.
It's just going to come. I think it's just going to come with time, and they'll add those servers after. So Mike did mention that in the chat, and I think that will eventually come with Riot because it eventually came with all the other popular games in the esports scene right now.
It's important. If they're going to run so much of their competition online, they really need to make sure that they have good coverage across the country, which I think probably goes without saying. It can be complicated to try and put together an architecture like that, though.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what I love about Valorant is that constantly the greatest minds in our scene are working on new tech and are unearthing new strategies, new ways to play, and just, kind of getting on the cutting edge of the new meta. I'd love to get you guys' take on this one. Here's Lothar finding out some kind of filthy tech is here in the practice range.
More Lothar and tech.
Do a rhythmic right click, left click, and you unclick, right click right after you shoot. So basically you try to achieve this, but super fast, like this. And this essentially gives your Stinger and Bulldog 100% accuracy while trying also to pick corners. This way. Right, you can do it even faster. And it's super effective with Bulldog on head level, but with the Stinger, you aim at the waist. Because you have super high consistent damage.
So Mitch, you wanna tell me about this, mate?
Let me preface this with there's two very different angles to look at this from. Is this something that professional teams are going to use that's going to completely change the game? Probably not. Is this something that can help you in your matchmaking games? You buy a Stinger, you buy a Bulldog instead of the actual rifles? Fuck yeah, it is. I've been using this a little bit. So when it comes to Lothar, some of his opinions get absolutely shit on by people. And sometimes that's justified. But I will tell you, there's not a, like, we've disagreed on things before, but you would be hard pressed to find a guy that gives as much of a shit about the game. I mean, who the fuck thinks of this? Who thinks of rhythmic right click, left click on a stinger? This guy spends all his time in the game, puts hours in. Now, I've been trying this. So he actually tweeted out later another variation, which is if you bind left click to your hold for ADS. So you would have to change this every round, because if you're going to use a phantom, you're fucked using that. But basically it means every time that you click at someone, your gun will ADS for the click and then un-ADS. So you don't even need to right click.
Does it fire at the same time? So can you have two functions bound to the same button?
You could.
You can do
what?
It. You can. Yeah.
Which is sorry, and just to add on to that, which is some things that maybe some players even as well could do sometimes in their ranked games, to bind like a dismiss or devour to your shot, so that whenever you actually get a kill, you could dismiss right like instantly when you get a kill into your opponent as well. So that is still available.
That's another thing that Lothar actually he was telling me about this back in fucking, I don't know, stage
like
1.
Summertime? Yeah.
It was a long time ago, and he was telling me like, dude, I'm playing with a Vandal, I just one tap people, I dismiss instantly, and it, like, obviously it's gonna cause some problems. Like, say you get behind them, right, and you shoot one guy, you're fucking dismissed out of there. So it's gonna be annoying. But with this one in particular, I'd say this is even more applicable, because what you do is, oh, I don't have a lot of money, I'm going to buy a bulldog. Let me quickly change my binds. You got enough time. If you know what you're doing, you know where to look. It'll take you 2 seconds to change those binds. You just got to remember, take them off if you're going to buy a phantom, an op, whatever it is next round. I actually kind of liked it. I'm not going to lie. Like right now, because ranks got reset hard, at least in the EU, I presume worldwide. So we were playing at the time. I think I was plat 1 when I was trying this, where I ranked in at. And dude, it was pretty fucking useful on an eco. So I'm a fan of this. I don't think it's going to be something that changes the game for pros, but hey, if you're playing like maybe mid to high elo, you could probably get a couple of kills with this when you're ecoing.
So you mentioned there's 2 different ways of looking at this, right? There's like a more of a, not a casual perspective, but like maybe a non-pro perspective.
Yeah.
Let's get a pro perspective on this and see what Shazam thought about this tech.
Trying also to pick corners.
This is the dumbest shit ever.
This way.
Like I said, sometimes he gets shit on for his opinion. And well, listen,
I think I have a real soft spot for Lothar, to be honest. Not knowing him personally, by the way, I've never worked with him, but he is very earnest, right? He is extremely earnest. He's a serious individual. He cares a lot about what he does, and I think that makes him an easy target for people to hang shit on him. Like we indulge in the troll. We do a bit of trolling here. We indulged in the joking about the Viper snake bite body
block. Okay, sorry about that.
There is a clip of that. I know. Sorry, Mel caught it on the EU broadcast. I think it was Kuka and someone else casting at the time. It was on Icebox game, but I saw it happened. I don't think it was intentional, but we gave him a bunch of shit for that. But you know what I mean? Like the guy cares a lot, and he does the fucking work. He's the guy that finds this shit out. But he speaks with he speaks earnestly with a lot of authority, which does make it a little bit easy to poke fun at him. So you know.
And I'll say this guy has fucking balls.
Love the guy.
Man, if I made a tweet, if I had an opinion on a game, I was like, oh dude, what if people, like, I don't know, use the smoke this way, and I posted it, and I had like 100 pros being like, you're a fucking idiot, this is shit. That's probably the last tweet I make. You know, I'm gonna be like, all right, I'm just gonna shout about cool things. Go, oh wow, that's all I'm gonna do from now on. So dude has balls. He just keeps going for it. You gotta fucking admire it. And
that's like me when I recommended that the sheriff one shot across the map and not be 145 because I hate that shit. But then a lot of people.
You walked that back, bro. You got fucking. You pulled your head back into your shell, mate. You were like, no. Okay, all
right, fine. You guys win. You guys fucking win. I get it now. So yeah, fucking props to Lothar to have the balls for that. But speaking of which, okay, so 2 things. First off, about the Viper tech. So you talk about the wall that came out and it bounced off the head of the diffuser, right?
Yeah.
And then it went away. There was another example during the NA VCT's open qualifiers. I think Mike's gonna remember it because we were watching it together. I forgot which match it was exactly, but it was again on Icebox. They planted the spike on the 2nd floor of B site, right? On that open site. And it went from mid side. And then they placed the Viper cloud all right next to the spike, the little icon on the ground, right? The little obstacle. So he throws a fucking snake bite, and it actually bounced off that actual item, the Viper Cloud, and bounced away from it and missed the fucking the set molly onto that spot. It was fucking hilarious. So that was another one where, you know, that's now point number 6 onto Lothar's Viper tech. So that is one thing there. But then again, back to what Shazam was saying, like, you know, he says that this is the dumbest shit ever. If you listen to it a little bit longer, he says, why don't you just ADS like every normal human being, pretty much, right? I think it makes sense if you're ADSing, and at that level, you're able to aim as well as you can with that ADS. But the fact that you're able to bind it into a mouse 1 and it's pretty much 100% accurate, then and you're able to shoot that a lot faster than just manually going with the left click, right clicks, then you are going to be able to do a little bit more damage as you can into Lothar with Lothar's tech. So imagine if this actually gets brought up somehow into, like, he says it's dumb, but then let's say fucking Newturn brings it out and they just fucking start wrecking. It would be fucking hilarious to see during Masters.
This is a very powerful tech that was used in COD 4, actually. So one of the classes, just known as Spec Ops in Pro Mod, used an AK-74U, which is like a stubby AK, which had a very high kick, but it was more like a submachine gun. And players, you know, used ADS tech like that to get like really nice burst on people. It was really hard to deal with. So, you know, obviously it reduces your spread by a great deal. And still, Lothar was saying you have to aim at the waist because that thing kicks like a mule. So
correct.
You know, I think what Shazam is getting at is that it's not sufficient improvement to sort of justify changing keybinds or mucking around with it. But it is something that could work. I think if you're a pro player, you're probably thinking a little bit more macro than just like how to shoot a gun correctly. You know, I think you have that kind of down pat a little bit more. We have a couple of players that are complaining of a couple of injuries here. You know, you'd be surprised actually, like with how often these guys play. Some of these wrist injuries tend to pop up a fair bit. So Soulcast is the first to sort of tweet about this, and you know, just mentioning like take care of your wrists because I've got to, you know, take some time off of practice. He's got obviously, you know, I guess what is that? Just to keep his wrist straight. I've seen a ton of, especially in Overwatch, because you're constantly doing fucking 180s. You like, it's a lot of players have wrist problems here. This is far more prevalent than you would realize.
Yeah, I feel like I would use these for also when I'm doing if I'm prone to risk injuries and when I want to do bench presses, I would actually use that as well. So it's one of those things that keep the wrist kind of like immobilized. So if you actually have to move with the mouse, then it's your whole hand and arm movement and more just in wrist movement. So I guess that could maybe help temporarily, but long term.
Sorry, you mean forearm aiming? Is that what you're referring to?
Exactly. So you're doing a full arm movement and moving your mouse instead of just wrist movement by having something that keeps your wrist like intact with what Soulcast is using right now. So
there are plenty of players that do that, play in that particular way. It generally requires you to have slightly lower sensitivity though.
That's me.
Actually, vastly lower sensitivity. If wrist aimers have high sense normally, I've always been like a forearm aimer, but there are problems sometimes with like being able to respond quickly to things that happen out of your periphery. You need to like jerk your shit around and sort of,
so I get a full desk mouse pad, so I could do a full swipe pretty much across the desk, man. Like I have
stand up and start running along the room.
I got a 90-degree desk right here.
It's like a shuffleboard, you know what I mean? You just run it along the side of your room. That's your mouse pad.
Dude, honestly, you know what? I don't know. Have you guys seen Parks and Recreation?
Yes.
You know the desk Ron gets at one point is a joke. It's like a circle. Should get that, and then whenever you need to do a 180, just fucking just spin. But you get one of those 360 monitors as well.
That's
it could be fucking sick.
So like your crosshair stays with you the whole time as you make the spin around.
Even better, your actual you mount the monitor to your chair, so you never solves the wrist injury problem. You now aim with your legs by physically turning as you go, and the monitor stays right here. So you're like, oh, the guy's left 90 degrees, turn 90 degrees, you've shot him. Listen, I've just reinvented
you sound
the game.
like a fucking tank commander
ever.
Rotate time.
That's the dumbest shit ever.
The spinning thing, like,
I'm moving. If the monitor is like this and I'm moving my legs, the monitor and the crosshair still stays at the same spot. I'm not fixing the whole fucking.
No, because obviously, like you keep your mouse on the circular mouse pad. You'll have all the way around your desk, and then you calculate the sensitivity on every game. So it's like every degree you turn, it turns. And now you've got like unbelievable accuracy. Instead of using what 3-4 muscles, You're using your whole body.
That's it.
That
It is an
pinpoint
immersive
precision.
experience, Mitch.
Alliance. This is an alliance analyst, ladies and gentlemen.
I did leave the team. I won't say they made me leave, but I proposed a circular desk for all our players.
Oh my god.
I'm pretty sure what happened is that he tried to put like cadaver and shit in like a haptic vest and make them run on a conveyor belt to fucking move in the map. And they were like, all right, Mitch, it's been good, but
Full
full
VR
$320,000 to implement this tech.
Oh
And we're
my
frankly
God.
getting shit on. So yeah, sorry. You're out of here.
Needless to say, actually, to get back on that, because Mitch Ben's talking about, hey, maybe you have to move like 3 or 4 muscles when you're playing with your wrist. But the thing is, if you're looking at how risk injuries could happen, you could go all the way from like, from your arm to your seating to your posture and everything. So it could be a strain that goes from the joint of your pec by not sitting well, and the nerve goes all the way to your wrist and fucks things up. Like just from going to like regular workouts. If I have, let's say, a back injury sometimes from working out, it could actually translate all the way across to my arm because everything's so attached into the nerve system. So it's actually quite important to not only think about your wrist, but just your whole body in general. And I think we're bringing up this topic as well for Soulcast is because he's not the only one, right? Akuko's had to do it right now. Take a break. Patty Pan potentially has to take a break. There's been players in the Counter-Strike industry and the Counter-Strike esports that had to go through risk operations to be able to actually continue their career into CSGO. So wrist injuries is actually quite common, especially when you're a player that aspires to be a pro player, and you're like, well, what do I have to do? Do I have to aim lab for fucking 12 hours a day? Do I have to do DMs for 12 hours a day? Do I have to play rank for 10 hours a day just to improve my aim? So you're always sitting, you're always slouching, you're always moving your wrist in like in a long amount of times that's necessarily or physically not supposed to be the norm in terms of how you're moving physically. So there's ways to look into that. There's ways to control that as well. I've tweeted it actually today. I've retweeted Dr. Who, which is at HP for Gamers on Twitter.
I've got the link here as well.
Yeah,
we'll show it.
Exactly.
Well,
So
first of
there you
all, we'll just mention that Akukos is also mentioning having similar problems as well. Remember, he had to play. He played one map and then he had to sit out for the rest of the series. I think for NIP.
That's been the normal stuff, actually. Yeah.
You follow this guy on Twitter if you want to know about especially wrist and posture issues. Dr. Matt, very, very good when it comes to dealing with sort of performance medicine. He deals with like a lot of these sort of teams on like a consultancy and sort of basis. But give him a follow. The whole 1HP team, they're actually a collective of I think they all have different roles, but like they're physio, chiro, I think, and nutrition as well, sports science. So the whole group of them are basically people that are very well trained and that are involved in esports. So I recommend checking out all of them. It's like 1HP Medic is one of the guys that I've mentioned before on the show. Those guys are legit. So Dr. Who especially, he shows a bunch of stretches, a bunch of like this one and this one and this one and this one. And
while you do that,
one.
you see what Uber is doing? You could actually learn how to stretch and tut at the same time. If you guys don't know what tutting is, it's a fucking amazing form of dancing that I wish I knew how to do. But even myself,
it's like
my wrist don't turn.
Robot dancing kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's like
I don't know how to do that.
So you're like doing like these movements like this.
Dude, I bet you our next guest knows how to do that though, for sure. Like I said, this person has the most ironic name ever because they are anything but. I want to welcome to the show to talk about EU VCT with us. It's the one, the only, Average Jonas.
wait, you got yo. Wait, 1 second. I'll show you how you do that. You do it.
Okay.
Wait, 1 second. Average Jonas.
Almost worked. It worked for like a good 2 seconds, and I lost you.
Oh no! Oh yeah! It's the noise canceling thing.
You might have
Correct.
Unlucky. It like cuts off echo. You know what I mean? Was that Nvidia? It's the Nvidia broadcasting, maybe. I don't know.
No. It's my analog mixer, but
I
do it the hardcore way.
Damn, you don't mess about, my guy. No, go excel up for this, man. He's got it all set up. Hey, welcome to the show, man. Great to have you here, man. You've been busy, I'm sure. Obviously, I catch your stream when I can. Not in the great time zone for me, but you've been obviously heavily involved in also, bringing a lot of Valorant esports in Europe, I think, to a huge number of fans, I think, and really, helping create a bunch of new fans. So tell us about what you've been up to for those, especially in NA, who maybe just aren't up at the right time to, enjoy your content.
In general, I guess I've always tried to fight for a more balanced exposure amount between Europe and especially NA, which has been difficult. I think I started complaining about the lack of watch parties back in September, I think, last year, because I was on a very scuffed sleep schedule and started hosting these watch parties for 100 Thieves and so on, simply because it wasn't allowed to watch EU. It wasn't allowed to watch party it. So sometimes I would like 3 months down the line, people would ask me, "Is there actually a EU scene? I thought there were only NA teams." And I was like, "Wait, how is it even possible that people in Europe doesn't know that there's a European scene?" So I think that's been like my pet peeve, to try to kind of balance things out by talking about watch parties, talking about events, trying to make the scene alive a bit. There aren't that many content creators who are very invested in esports outside of people that play esports in Europe, and I think that's one of the problems, that we don't have anyone to watch when the other ones are playing.
Now, Jonas, you not only, of course, a streamer and content creator, and you're running these watch parties, but you've also been on the desk as an analyst for Masters as well. So, I think that's a pretty unique, crossover to sort of have been in both of those worlds. So, what do you prefer? Do you know what I mean? Between sort of being part of the watch parties and sort of really, getting to host it on your channel, as opposed to, getting dressed up in a nice red suit and getting on the broadcast.
I think if I'm gonna dress up in a suit, I'd prefer to sing. So the way I see it was that when I joined the broadcasts and in the start as an analyst and a caster, I feel like I kind of did it to help create more exposure to the scene, because I wasn't allowed to watch party it anyway, so there wasn't really much else to do. Because I actually made this really ironic tweet about this, where, well, they denied me the watch party, so I went to Berlin and casted it instead. But now that we have a lot more casting talent coming into the scene, I don't want to take any of their seats, because I think that, first of all, the people that want to become really good casters are the ones who should get the spots, because I don't think it's correct if I take someone's casting spot just because I have a lot of exposure value, if my dream isn't to be a big caster, because I honestly can't prioritize spending a lot of time practicing getting my casting better, which is why I've said no to casting these qualifiers and previous, because there are so many out there who are getting really good at it, and I don't want to take their spots. And I think I can help more by doing things outside than just being on the broadcast itself. And also, if you think about it from building your own brand perspective, I think the amount of exposure I create with my own stream develops my brand more than being on a broadcast at this point. So it's not really for so it's not really for personal benefit either.
Yep.
Being Jonas now.
Being cast is tough for branding, because you can't really be. I mean, not that people that run watch parties are self-indulgent, but as a cast, you can't think about your brand, because it's less about you and more about sort of how you highlight the stories of the players. Where if you're running a watch party, it's infused with your brand by necessity, because that's why people are watching your watch party. They come for you, and whatever it is that you're doing, it kind of helps. So I feel that. I think casters, if you're a caster out there and you're trying to sort of build some sort of big brand, you probably will end up being a worse caster as a result.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not a trade-off you want to take. You want to be known for being a really good caster, and not for someone who builds their brand as a caster and model at the same time, or some ridiculous combination for those who do multiple things at once. And but I think also, especially the value of watch parties is also the fact that now, especially with COVID and isolation, there's so many people out there who want to watch broadcasts, but they feel alone. And I think by watching it with a streamer, it kind of feels like they're not watching it alone, because you have this two-way interaction. You can answer questions, and I try to also cater to the newbies when they ask things like, why did this guy just die to the spike? He could have run away. So, yeah, but he could have gotten more money. And you can spend time discussing these details that don't make sense to be put on an official broadcast. And that's why I think that it's a huge added value to give people the choice of having a watch party to go to.
And just to add on to that, just for the EU VCTs, because let's say, for example, I cannot do a watch party because they're on official broadcasts, or because they're on Ryan Centrals. But if I'm not mistaken, I think even though you were in casting, you were still able to do watch parties by watching other streams, right? Is that something that you had an agreement with Riot to be able to do in EU for this or for the qualifiers that just passed?
Yeah, so when the way it's been is that everything that Nerd Street Gamers hosted in the US is always okay to watch party as long as you have their logo on and there's like a hashtag and stuff. For EU, it's been a lot more tricky. The first time I was able to do a watch party was actually when we did the first community casted event last time with Freaks for You, where we were asked to do our own casting. So we all casted on our own channels. And then on the final day, I didn't have any matches to cast. And then I just asked, guys, can we just try this once? This is the last day of community casted events. And it was the day after I did that solo cast in the Icebox Tower.
I remember that. You were you edited yourself into a tower in Icebox, and you were just going for it, bro. Like going for it, man.
But yeah, so and then that was like a test attempt, and I think a lot of people found that to be very successful, especially obviously when Liquid is playing, a lot more people will come into the watch parties with the same as Myth in TSM and so forth. And then a lot of time passed by, and I was actually able to get one of the spots as a watch party host for Iceland, which was huge for me personally because that was really hard to do. We needed like letters of recommendations. We had several meetings with the higher uppers in Riot Europe to talk to basically convince the people of Riot Global that it was okay to have a European watch party host, even though he's not a 1 million Andy. And but my pet peeve with all of this is, why is it so hard? Why do I need to literally sleep with the president to get a watch party? You know what I mean? And then meantime, someone in the US is like, oh yeah, they asked me to watch party, so I did it one of the days. And said, hey, what's up, dude? You wanna click this button?
And I got this cool box of knives sent to me.
Yeah. Oh wait, you know what I got?
Oh, let's see.
Oh my god, I feel so blessed.
Dude, I'm jealous.
So blessed, man.
Dude, I'm jealous. It's actually a sick backpack.
You can take your spike and your knife skins, but can you travel to school with it? No. Anyway.
I actually like the backpack. The backpack looks really cool. And of course the spike is fucking cool for NA too, but like fuck, in the end at least you guys got something too, right? I'm jealous of both ends. Yeah. I'm just sitting here casting games.
That pales in comparison to getting a fucking spike with like the knives and shit, bro. Like let's not pretend like this is anywhere remotely.
And one of them is a bottle opener. The Karambit one is a bottle opener too.
Shut up, man.
You're rubbing it in, dude. So,
but yeah,
I mean,
rub it in even more.
Dude, then we got back to then we got back to the second community casted, which was this week and last week. And then we basically came back to the thing again where we were allowed to do community casted watch parties again. And now that the main event starts, we're not allowed to do watch parties.
Yes,
so it's still a struggle, but we're heading down the right way, and we're hoping to get something done for EMEA and Berlin. But this main event, we're not allowed, which sucks.
Yeah.
Okay, that is I think I poked around about it a little bit after we talked about it on Twitter, and there's some mumbo jumbo legal European Union stuff that I didn't really understand. So it didn't really help me really sort of get a proper grasp of the situation. Obviously, it is kind of complicated. But no, I mean, we could talk for ages, Jonas, about you and what you do. But we have you here as well because we're bringing the heavy hitters in to talk a little bit about what we've seen in EU VCT so far, right? Obviously, that is definitely your and Mitch's domain here. I want to start talking about the our intro topic to a lot of the regions we talked about. We talked about this with Korea last week, but we're starting to see KO pop up a little bit more. In Europe, do we feel like KO had a big impact? I think we saw like NIP play a bit of it, yeah?
Yeah, Rhyme was sick, but I don't think it was anything to do with KO. Like, I feel like of the usage I've seen of this agent, I'm not sure if you agree, Jonas, but I love the agent, and I think he's got a lot of potential, but from what I've seen so far, teams don't know how to use him.
I think that a lot of teams are putting their duelist player on KO and using him as a flasher, and that's pretty much it. And the big difference between that and, for instance, if a Sova main plays him, is how you use the utility and when. So I think there's a lot of more potential in KO, but at the same time, it's just like when Yoru came in and Sky came in, that they were never used in the start. They slowly made their way into the meta. So I think that's going to happen the same with KO, just because like part of his toolkit is just Counter-Strike straight up, and the pop flashes are amazing and stuff. But the whole concept of when to use the dagger, why and how, I think for a lot of teams, it requires them to switch a core component of their team setup and strategy to make that effective, which is also why, again, we didn't see Yoda for ages, because it changes the entire team dynamic. So I think that's why you can't just like slot him in and switch him with a duelist or switch him with Sova and make him make a lot of impact.
Yeah, it's definitely going to require a lot of mixing things around. I think playing Sky with him in place of a Sova is going to be really strong, but we got to just see how things go. Like for now, you have to think about it from the team's perspective that for a lot of them, this is their last chance to make it to champions. So these guys aren't fucking around with, oh, let's try this brand new comp on the new meta and see how it goes. Because if it doesn't go well, you can't just say, oh, well, it was worth the risk, worth a try. Because no, now you're not going to the biggest event that's ever happened. And the one that everyone's going to remember. This is the first massive, end of year. It's champions. If you're the guys that win that or come second or whatever, that's going to mean a lot more than it will in 2-3 years. And I think risking such significant changes just isn't something that we see teams willing to do. Yoru, guy's still pretty shit, but when it comes to Sky, that really highlights it. Yes, Sky's received a buff, but even before that, you see how much things improved when teams started to just get used to her. And it took a good few weeks before we even saw her getting picked up regularly by players.
Yeah, but like out of the box, her value wasn't apparent, I think, until people started realizing how to sort of derive value from Trailblazer and Guiding Light predominantly.
People are skeptical to Aussies in general, so it doesn't help.
I think, honestly, I think the thing is that you can even look at something very similar to what we talked about earlier, Uber. You were saying about Sharks, right? These guys came over to Europe. They went, oh shit, this meta is actually a lot better than what we're playing. But would you rather execute the better meta poorly, or would you rather actually smash the one that you're playing? And I think for a lot of teams, that they're very risk averse. They do not want to go into that shit and roll the dice and see how it goes. And it does just make sense, especially if it means pushing one of your players outside their comfort zone. If you have like one bad couple of rounds to start off a map and you're playing a new agent, you're not going to have that B and C plan to slot yourself into. So there's a lot to think about. And I think it goes deeper than just, oh, no one's playing them, so I guess he's not that big of a deal. It's more like, yeah, give it a month and let's see.
So
yeah, but
the
like
meta is dictated by the stakes, is what you're saying. Like the stakes on these matches, like how important it is to win and not lose. The meta is determined by, how serious these teams are about not fucking up at this point. Like they're less willing to dabble.
It's also time restraints, though. You think about from the perspective of a lot of these teams, they have just played. Well, for all of them, actually, they've just played in the first set of Challengers qualifiers on a different meta, which means they didn't have the time to look at KO and how does he work, because you're fully focused on that. That tournament ends with these teams not qualifying. Now you have a week or two to adapt it. And is a week or two long enough to completely mix up your meta to find out exactly what works best for you? Probably not. And with the stakes being so high, you don't want to throw away a week of practice trying different ways to use KO and then go, shit, that was all fucking useless because we don't actually know how to use them, or we haven't found one that works for us. So let's go back to our old comp. And then you've got a week of prep for your event instead of 2. So it's really to do with the calendar and how the calendar works. If KO had been introduced before we started Challengers altogether, I think we would have seen a lot more teams use him.
Okay. Yeah, but I think also it's also the fact that the game is still in a really early state, which is why we still see that people pick agents that are comfort picks, even though someone says, oh, why is he using Reyna when he can get so much more teamwork and utility with some other agent? And then he gets an ace with Reyna because she can dismiss out of the most screwed up positions, right? And then you can just like throw your notes away and just be like, well, I mean, he's making it work. What can I say, right? And that's always the tricky part of a game that is so new, that unless it's like with Counter-Strike, where the meta has like slowly been progressing for 10 years, I don't think there's going to be space in 5 or 6 years for people picking comfort picks. I think that's when you're going to get to the point where the meta is like, you just have to be able to play these agents on the highest level or else you're falling behind. But we're not nearly at that point yet, which is why so many comps still work, which is why so many pages are still unturned. And there are so many strategies that nobody knows. Like, for instance, just like the Phoenix Molly trick that I invented like a month ago. Why didn't any Phoenix main figure that out half a year ago? I played Phoenix for a week and I figured a groundbreaking way to use his mollies. And that just shows like there are all these kind of small, and same with Lothar's thing as well. There are all these kind of things that we still don't know. And there's so many things to explore. So that's why I'm a bit scared to just say that this is the comp you should play. And if not, you're not going to win.
I mean, there's a lot of volatility right now, I think, as a result of that. Teams are at different levels in terms of understanding maybe like the more idealized way to play. Let's have a look at the bracket in EU here for week 2. So this is Challenges 2, of course, Stage 3. I think some notable things here is that Heretics, again, fall short. So 10 Star is a team I don't personally know a ton about, but I mean, 2-0 over Heretics is pretty convincing stuff. We knew that Artis was taking a break, I think, due to health issues. Also, and this is the upper bracket, so these teams have another crack at it. Giants Gaming also breeze their way through, and these are pretty decent teams to beat, right? Big, Vitality, and Alliance. They screech through this upper bracket, and then we can show the lower bracket because these teams get a second bite of the apple, and much to Mitch's pleasure, Alliance do get through. They have to fight tooth and nail in order to do so, and Heretics just don't make it. This is another challenge where this Heretics roster, you know, who have big expectations because of, you know, the addition of, Artis and Patatech, even if maybe you could argue G2 win out in that trade, those two players are still relatively highly regarded. But tell us about, let's start with the Heretic situation here, because this is a pretty ignoble end for a team that was earlier in the year really making waves as a roster.
Yeah, let's be very honest though. Like we saw this coming. We knew that this wasn't a championship winning team. The second we saw those roster changes with the Heretics to G2, we said G2 won that, Heretics won the financial game. And I think they're going to be, obviously no team is going to be happy with being knocked out, but at the same time, you can't be surprised. That's for sure. The way that they got knocked out, maybe a little bit more convincing in Vitality's favor than they would have liked, especially on, I think it was the first map was Breeze, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is, this Heretics roster has a lot of potential for the future. We were saying it going throughout all the casts, and right now, you know, you can't expect a team like this, especially with so many young players, to perform, with a week or two prep. It's just not possible. Especially compared with the level of some of these other guys. I mean, how long have Vitality been grinding to get to the level where they're actually looking good now? And losing the 10 star, I know a lot of people will take that as a real shock, but this 10 star, it's another UK team that's come out of absolutely nowhere, and they're actually sick. When we covered them in the very start of the open qualifiers, we got to cover a 10 star game by chance, just because they were coming up against a decent opponent, so we would follow them. And they were sick. They really impressed myself and Tom. So I wasn't too surprised, let's say, with the first matchup. But then Vitality taking down Heretics definitely shocked me and gave me a lot more respect for that roster.
Yeah, and I think that personally, I still haven't seen 10 star play, so I'm really looking forward to that. But one thing that is also really sad is that after the roster swaps, Heretics also lost all their championship points.
Yeah.
And they're literally not playing in the champions and the worlds at this point. They have 0 points. And it is just weird to have a team that won first strike that actually has 0 points and 0 chance of
That's bizarre.
Of playing in worlds. You know, that's like how did we get to that? They must have known, right? They must have known that you sacrifice your points when you do this roster.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
The points wouldn't get them to Masters. They knew that unless they had a big result.
LCQ.
They could get them to last chance qualifier. Exactly. Yeah. And they gave that up willingly. They took an on paper worse team, a less experienced team with players that aren't of the caliber that they gave away. Basically, they made a shit ton of money from G2. Like Carlos came up, slapped his checkbook down and went, "What's the fucking number? What is the number? Let's go." And there's no way, unless someone on Heretics was on heroin, there's no way they sat down and went, "This is a good decision for the team right now. We will win champions now.
We shall make it work."
This was a downgrade. Yeah. But it is, again, like, you look at the financial situation of paying the players that they gave away versus the ones they took in. They've saved a lot of money there, so they're not expecting to have the same results straight away. I'd say that this roster probably has 6 months of runway before they'll actually be chopped.
I would say probably not even, because at this point, now that I think about it, is with the downtime that we're going to have, as soon as Berlin's going to be done, and all of these teams that were trying to make it to last chance qualifier or trying to make it to Champions Tour and can't, I feel that as much as it's going to happen in NA as it will happen in EU, there's going to be a lot of teams that explode, implode, and disband. And with that, with the paycheck that you have now from Heretics, you might have a pool of actually promising players and already established players that you could eventually pick up and then have that run for 2022. So it's actually not bad as a business interaction and a business deal to think about it in, you know, the not necessarily the long run. This is only looking at the LRP of 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I
And
mean,
they probably assessed that their chances of making it were very low anyways.
Yeah.
So you might as well take the guaranteed payout.
Exactly, and get those players in next time with the salary they could actually afford now. It's actually not.
And
bad.
also, I mean, they probably also didn't know that RDS suddenly couldn't play anymore due to health issues. So let's not forget, it's not like they were just, we're just gonna take this team and it's just gonna suck.
Yeah,
you know, like,
yeah.
I mean, but of course that really sucks that you're gonna.
I think they sucked equally when they had artists. I'll be honest. Like when full roster or not, it was still a massive downgrade with the players that they gave away. Like I genuinely don't think there's any way anyone could have justified that decision. Especially Nukia. Like Hora is one of the best lurkers we had. Evova's an incredible smoker, and then Nukia he's probably going to be one of the best players in the world. Right? Top 10. I'll guarantee that. I'd slap money on that, no problem. So the fact that they gave them away, either they couldn't afford them, or because like don't forget, it's not just G2. It's not like G2 came in and took their players and that was it. Like Horace fucked off to Turkey. He's playing on a mix there. So you know, this was something happened. Maybe players just didn't like playing together. I don't know what it was, but Heretics knew going into that deal, we're fucking our chances for this year, but we'll make a lot of money and we'll bounce back, I suppose.
Yeah.
It wasn't just Heretics that this Vitality roster with Chalabi, by the way, who we saw at the Campus Clutch. It wasn't just them that knocked out. NIP got knocked out by this roster. This is a shocker for me. This was quite the series in fairness. Very, very close. Breeze, which is normally not that close. Normally a team picks Breeze because they're just like way better on it, and you sort of see a pretty one-sided game. But this was really, really tight. I'm shocked that NIP fall out at this stage with this roster. I mean, this is with Eccles obviously having recently been added. I think he plays 3 different agents over the course of the series. So like we expect, he does play the Breach, plays the Sova, plays the Sky. But yeah, this first map was really close. And so were the other 2, but just not enough for this NIP roster.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that is important to know is also what effect does it have to switch various players? So for instance, let's say that you have a 16-year-old duelist with like a minus in milliseconds reaction time. You switch that one out with someone else that kind of does the same job. It's not going to take a year to adjust. But if you switch your IGL, there are so many things that needs to be changed, because that changes the entire team dynamic. Because depending on how heavy they rely on their IGL, that's something we simply don't know because we can't really listen into their comms. Is that if the IGL is kind of like Angel, where he just micromanages everything, he's like a puppet master, then of course changing that role is going to affect a lot more than switching an entry fragger or a duelist main that still plays Jet and still does operators and dashes. So of course, when you have a team that has played together for a while and they switch out the IGL and get the other IGL in, that's not an easy task for Eccles either to just jump into and just make everything work. So I think that's very difficult.
What adds to that as well is the fact that Existence historically is a very hands-on leader, and he's now the coach. So it's not a situation, or at least while he's taking a step back while he's injured, he's coaching them in the background. That then presents a bit of a problem, because you're not just Eccles coming in to IGL a squad that he hasn't IGL'd before, so bringing his idea of how to play the game into a 4-man that already have a good idea, and both need to now adjust to the other. You also have Existence in there in the background, and you can imagine, like, I don't know, if you were a plumber and you had to do plumbing at a plumber's house and he's watching you do it the whole time. It's going to be pretty fucking scary. You're like, oh yeah, I usually just put the nut here, and he's like, no, it goes over.
This is how I feel when people really sing in my presence.
I don't know what you mean.
I'm like,
but yeah.
Why did you just do that to me?
I've been on the other end of that. I used to run wine tastings at a fine wine store, and the fucking winemaker came in one day and quizzed me about his wine that I was tasting, and I didn't know it was him because they're just average blokes. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, I made this wine by the way." And I was like, "What the fuck, bro?"
By then you already smashed, Mitch. Everything just tasted the same.
I mean, you ain't gonna catch me
this
spitting
one
that
fucking is
stuff
the
out,
spot, Mike.
You don't just chuck a $20 bottle of wine. Jonas has a better
like to
Aussie
use
accent
a
than me
pint
now, by
glass
the way.
instead. Helps it go down.
Exactly.
What do you say, Mitch?
I said, you have a better Aussie accent than me now, I reckon. Because I've been losing mine.
Got a lot of practice, you know.
First time I met Jonas, we're at a bar in LA, and he busts this out of me. Obviously, there's just some fucking Norwegian guy turning up. First of all, I'm like, okay. First of all, it's a bit offensive that you're better looking than I am, more talented, and now you sound more Australian than me. For fuck's sake, Jonas.
Give something to me, mate. What the fuck, man?
It's what I said to this guy. It's what I said to this guy when we had our first cast over in First Strike. So we sat down. Obviously, like, all I know is, oh, this dude hasn't commentated in English before. He's gonna be casting with you. I'm like, all right, let's see how we can make this work. And we did it. And I turned to him after. I was like, fuck you, man. Fuck you. How dare you be this good? How fucking dare you? Like, it's not fair, bro. It's not fair at all.
It's like we have the character creation points when we're born, you know what I mean? He just somehow got double. You know what I mean? He bought the founders pack to the game and just has like the extra character, you know, attribute points to plug in there.
Pay to win Jonas.
Huh?
Pay to win Jonas. You got
Yeah,
that.
pay
You
to
got
win.
that
I came with the expansion pack.
Preloaded, motherfucker.
DLC.
Let's talk about the teams that qualified, though, right? Obviously, talked about NIP Vitality and that the end for them. But okay, so I mean, I'm on board with Jonas here. I'd love to see more of this 10-star roster because I think that there are a few people, you know, close to the scene that were expecting good things from this team, but still, one has to admit that this is a great result. They get past MTP Finest and then Heretics. They 2-0 Heretics. It's not the easiest of series for them, but give me the blurb on this 10-star team who's now going to be at the Challengers Finals.
Yeah, and they got pretty fucked actually on seeding because now it makes sense, but I feel very bad for them. They come up against BDS. That should be a game that they win, but then they got a pretty tough time when it comes up against either Liquid or Vitality. They'll drop to the lower bracket and probably face off against someone like Fnatic or Liquid later on anyways. So they're going to have a really tough time in making it through, but I think this is definitely a team that could push for top 10 in EU, even coming into, you know, well, it's a hard thing, man. I almost want to say like, oh yeah, the next few months. What the fuck is in the next few months? Because unless you make it through, there's nothing. You're sat at home, you're chilling, hoping that somebody runs a third-party tournament, which in Europe sadly doesn't really happen. So yeah, if this team ends up disbanding because there's nothing on, I'm gonna fucking cry, man. That would suck.
This series, I think, Mitch, you sort of probably having seen it, I think, is it's what 13-10 on Icebox first, and then Heretics get fucking destroyed on Breeze, absolutely blown out here. But this is what 4 UK players, right? So even more UK talent in Valorant here, and a Finnish player in Polvi.
Yeah, Polvi's actually really sick on the Jet. He can be hyper aggressive at times, but it works. And I mean, playing with a bunch of UK guys, of course, he's going to be hyper aggressive. I really like their decision making. I loved everything that came with this 10-star roster. Like their pacing in early rounds was spot on. These guys sold incredible fakes. I loved it, man. And we had that sense that, okay, maybe these guys, when they come up against the big teams, maybe they'll be able to actually do some damage because they're playing a good brand of Valorant. And the Heretics game, the first map, I was watching and thinking, okay, fair enough. Close game, type of 10-star performing. The second, they just got their dicks out, man. I don't know what the fuck happened, but I think Heretics fell asleep.
I mean, I see this a ton on Breeze lately. It happens in NA as well, where like a team picks this map and it's just a little dominant. Do you guys think that's just because, you know, teams are still learning to pick this map up? It's not getting played a bunch. It's being banned out fairly often, or is it the nature of the map itself?
I think that part of it is time. That like a bunch of teams that are, like you said, I mean, okay, can we just talk about the fact that every time a team loses, someone types on Twitter that they are very proud of how well they did, considering they only had X week of practice with X amount of, because I see that, I swear I see that every time a team loses, doesn't matter who it is, it's always like, yeah, we did really well, we only had this amount of practice. Yeah, I guess most of them had, to be fair, it seems like. But anyway, I think that Breeze in a lot of ways is so different from other maps that if you're gonna, it's like a Counter-Strike map, right? It's I think it's like it's like an Aztec Mirage kind of map, and I think that you have to really change the way you play the game to get good at Breeze. And I don't think teams, either they don't prioritize it enough. You know how it's similar to how Fnatic qualified to Iceland actually, where they would just not play split. because they knew that we're only going to have to play best of 3s until we qualify to Iceland. The first time we need to play a best of 5, well, that's when we're already qualified. And that's when they lost to Liquid, because Liquid did play Split a lot. Suddenly you had like triple duelists on Split from Fnatic, and people were like, what? This surely can't be a thing. And then Boaster was straight up, well, we didn't practice it. So you could question if it's the same thing with Breeze, where teams just haven't prioritized practicing enough, which means that if they for some reason, sometimes you play a mind game when you do the map pools, right? You ban this because you expect them to pick that. And what if suddenly you float Breeze and then it's picked and you didn't expect it? Well, then you could technically get really fucked when you play Breeze, I guess.
Yeah, but at the same time, like they had played Breeze quite a bit, and they beat some decent teams. Heretics, like they beat No Poaching on that map, and I felt like they weren't dog shit on it. But then the 10-star Vitality games happen where they get 3 in 2 rounds, depending on which one we're talking about. It was strange. I think that this, like, the problem is you can have the preparation on this map, but you'll come up against teams that have these really ratty ways to play it. Like even the execution from 10-star, a lot of the time they have their wall on B. That pretty much robs you of any information. They get to push up on site, use their nades to clear out backside. They get site control. Now they've got a cam to play off of. They manage plant. It's really difficult to get back in. And if you don't have protocols for like the post-plant takes that we've seen from teams like, I think it was Liquid that had the, on defensive side, they would put the wall on A, so they could actually get back into or on B, sorry, so they could retake into that side. If you don't see things like that, those kind of intricacies of which really only come when you play a map, I don't know, 20 times in pracs, and you notice, fuck, we're having a really tough time retaking B, and opponents go there a lot, then you adjust to that. Whereas these guys may be coming in with a little bit less, where they're like, hey, yeah, we can play, just pop the wall down there, blocks the angle, it's great. And then they get rushed down, fucked on, and they've no way to get back into a site. So yeah, I think if Heretics had started on the other side, it would have been a little bit different, but they didn't. So got shit on.
Now our resident EU fanboy, One Rusted Silver in chat points out that this is Jonas coaching this Heretics team, right?
I think so. Yeah,
from what I understand. So that obviously he comes from FPX, and they had a very specific kind of style right now with Doom Bros coaching that team. So there's a good chance that roster has a pretty decent ceiling, considering the kind of coaching presence they have. If you attribute FPS's success in any sort of degree to what Jonta was able to put together on that roster, so there might be something, at least some copium for Heretics fans. I don't know if you feel the same way, Mitch.
No, I think that the success comes from Doom Bros on the FPX side. Like Jonta was brought in late to be a coach. I don't fully know exactly what was happening between Jonta and Doom Bros, but I can say whenever you would constantly hear people say like, oh, their coach Jonta. It's like Doom Bros is still coaching this team. It's almost like they're sharing the responsibility, but I guarantee he wasn't there doing the pure analysis job, because it for so long been juggling both. And I guess the team just felt more familiar with his input versus Jonta's in the end. But I wouldn't say that that's something that's going to massively improve Heretics going forward, specifically. But I think that the team as a whole, the roster that's there, it has potential. But honestly, if you're a Heretics fan, you're surprised that they lost, you're an idiot. Like we warned about this every day on the broadcast. Didn't matter who was casting. Everyone was saying new roster, shittier version of Heretics for now, and give them a couple of months to really develop. Question is, like, are Heretics actually going to do that? Because like you said, right, in the downtime in the next couple of months, they're not going to have shit to do. Are they going to keep paying these players? Maybe they've come to an understanding in the off season. There's some sort of a downgrade. Like I don't know what the fuck is happening, but the I hope for the sake of some of these players that they stick together, especially Valorant. That guy is insane.
I'm struggling to follow the trajectory for Heretics here as well. I'm not privy to any of like the roadmap, but it's a bit confusing. Here's a team that we were a little bit, well, I was a bit critical of, I think maybe some individual players, right? But Giants actually, they get through in the upper bracket here. They qualify, getting victories over Big. Crucially, they 2-0 Vitality, which I think is pretty darn large. And then they get a victory over Alliance here as well. Now it goes to overtime on Icebox and almost gets there on Bind, but this is that roster with David P and Meadow, sort of at the center. And I think we mentioned that Ambi was stepping in, or was more of a recent addition here. But I think this team has exceeded expectations as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at least in a way. But again, it's one of those things where it depends on how close to the scene, I guess, you monitor things.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have one of those situations where you'd say, "Oh, this team came out of nowhere," and then people who've been watching every match or following closely, like, "What do you mean? We've been looking at these guys, and they've finished 4th or 5th every single time, and it's always been super close matches." So it's not. So it could be one of those situations too. But then again, David P has. I felt like he was one of the first players who kind of got a lot of exposure in the Valorant scene very early on as an EU player. And he had constant like roster struggles. Like he would jump to a new team and then he would try again and would try again. It would never like properly work. So at least it's really cool to see that it seems to be working for them now. I've been watching his Twitter too. There's been a lot of wholesome tweets there recently from their performance, at least.
Yeah, I think
he gets hyped up a bunch because he was the addition to the incomplete G2 team back then, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things I'll say for Giants, I'm really impressed with how well they've done, considering how little time they've had to practice. That was for you, Jonas. No, it's a very odd roster, man, because I look at this, obviously when we talk about the victory over Lions, pure luck. But it's a roster that has a lot of potential, and that Hoodie was one of the most hyped players for me when he came into the scene originally, back when he was playing on Orgless, moving into Prodigy. I really enjoyed watching Hoodie play, and I thought he had a bunch of potential when he was playing that back when it was more viable, the pure Jet, right? He was one of these players that we were asking, is he actually going to add the depth there? Meta as well, Latino, these guys are incredible. David P, obviously, when he comes down to statistics, absolutely fine. He's a fantastic player. I think that there's been a lot of issues in the past when it comes down to personality, fitting in with teams, but from my experience, very nice guy. And I think if he's, which after G2, after Excel, probably had a lot of self-reflection and learning on that after everything that happened in Counter-Strike as well. I see this team with maybe not as much potential as someone like 10-Star. Honestly, like if I compare them head to head, I would believe more in the 10-Star team than I would in the Giants, because to me it looks like a mix. It looks like a mix of good players, but I don't see the leader there. I don't see the direction that this team's going to go in. Also, very oddly, they have 5 different nationalities, and I think all of them have a different base language. So that's a very strange team composition to make happen. Although I'm sure for at least the vast majority, they speak English to a very good degree and can.
I mean, they still made it work over Alliance, right?
I mean, that's a great point. Yeah, you have
as I said, pure fucking luck. Let's
Spaniard.
drop that point.
I mean, winning an alliance isn't really, you know. When,
oh, let me pull up Liquid versus Alliance. When did that happen?
Oh yeah. And where's Liquid in this tournament? Oh yeah, they didn't have to play this tournament. Oh, that's true, because they already qualified.
Right, okay. Okay.
Perhaps we get to rehash this.
Can't wait to cast Liquid now.
Challenges playoff. Yeah. Looking forward to the very unbiased commentary from.
We can always do we can always just like arm wrestle or something, Mitch. But I don't think I have a low enough table.
Fuck you.
That one actually came out of left field for me, because I thought you were just going to flex on the guy. But... See you, Mitch. All right. All right.
Fun,
we lost Mitch, but it's only a small issue, as you guys can imagine. So, I mean, ironically, we're going to be discussing the team that Mitch homes for in just a moment. But we saw, Giants get through, and I think it's fascinating that they have such a diversity of nationality on that particular team. So let's fucking talk about Alliance. It's the lower bracket that they have to come through. But in fairness, they get a victory over Big here. Am I right in saying that it's a little bit... Okay, so Mitch, if you're on Alliance still, assuming that you are, and not just a huge fanboy of them, would you rather have gone up against Heretics or Big to try and qualify?
Oh, Big. Fucking hell. Yeah, Big.
I feel like they had a slightly easier way through here. I mean, they did get to like the finals of the upper bracket, so I'll give them that, but...
I don't know, man. Like, Cream Rail Bettis, Vexed Gaming. These are some pretty big names,
Oh,
big.
shut the fuck up.
Literally a big name in every single way. It's they definitely had an easier run through the bracket than some of the other teams. But at the same time, fuck you. They made it. Let's go.
Well, let's talk about the game then, you bastard. All right, you fucking want to talk about your team so much, and then you leave me with a platitude. All right, Icebox is the first map in this series. 13-9 is the score. You hyped up this Juso guy, right? This other your fellow Irishman. Pretty good map from him on the Rainer.
Yeah, so Juicy's obviously newest addition to the team, coming in filling the fifth slot that's been kind of a revolving door for a little while. And he had a really tough time when it came down to some of the earlier matches in the last challengers, for example. And these guys were on boot camp just beforehand, and I think nerves really got the better of him when it comes down to, he's a very young guy. I think he's 16. Like, he's very, very young. Competing at this level is a brand new thing. Even some of the names that he's playing with and against, it's really tough for a kid to get used to that. But now certainly starting to feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more at home. And at least, although I have no input on it anymore, I fucking hope he stays around, because, hey, we need some more Irish pros in the scene. Let me rephrase that. We need some Irish pros in the scene. For him,
adults,
in terms of what was kind of odd for me was looking at him not playing like, a Jet and going in there, because obviously Cadaver has taken that some of the time. But Jet has been Jusu's bread and butter. So expanding a little bit more into agents that he's not so comfortable with and still putting up the numbers has been it's been a beautiful thing to see.
He almost drops 30 on Ascent on Sage, which is pretty impressive stuff. So for his age, he's 16, yeah?
Mm-hmm. I think
he's
like
16, an age restriction on playing in Masters?
It's 15, is it?
Oh, fucking hell.
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure he's able to play in Masters and all that.
It's been fun to watch Juicy, though, because I've followed him for a while. Back he played in Volvo Peak, and he played in a few other gathers and mixes, and he would always post some crazy clips on Twitter from ranked matches, and it seems like he's just been grinding ranked a lot, and then he finally gets his chance, and it's cool to see that you have these young talents who are actually given the chance, because there are so many ex-pros or people from other games or people with a reputation, and grabbing someone who basically doesn't have any kind of track record is risky, but it can also be a gold mine. And I think that in this case, I think it might just be that.
Kind of like that they're in a Vitality Alliance, are in a position to take these quote unquote kind of risks here, on players like him. Really impressive stuff. I think Alliance were, I think a big ask for them to qualify through our first challenges here in stage 3, but they still go up against some pretty, solid opposition here. I think the one thing that maybe casts a shadow of doubt over them is them getting 2-0'd by Giants. Even though it was obviously a close series, I probably would have expected, again, not being as close to the scene, them to sort of win a series like that. I reckon they probably would have hoped for that as well. But how does their road ahead look? Because I'm pretty sure they have to go up against Fnatic in their first match in the main event.
Yeah, I was taking a look at some of these games earlier and how the bracket can play out. Certainly a tough first game. I think moving down to the lower bracket will be an easy enough run up until the second last game, when it would be probably Fnatic or Liquid again. Maybe a Vitality, depending on how things go. But yeah, let's put it this way. They had an easier run coming through the initial challengers. Now they've got a pretty tough one going through that lower bracket. So I guess they're going to make up for it.
I mean, I think it's one important thing to point out, though, that the Fnatic we saw in Iceland is a very different Fnatic than what we've seen recently, because I think they were one of those teams that really got struck by the increased price on ability, because there's more rounds that are more towards pure gunplay and less rounds that are about using your utility correctly, because there's simply not enough economy for it. And I think that hurts Fnatic more than a lot of other teams because of how strategic they played in, which was one of the reasons why they did so well and came all the way to the finals in Iceland. So I'm interested to see if they are able to kind of make this switch, and if they're going to use KO a lot now that they've had some time to practice and get back to what made Fnatic one of the best teams in the world.
That's definitely something that I want to see. Are they going to pull out the KO or not? Because if there's any team that can take advantage of that, any two teams, let's say, it would be FPX and Fnatic. I think those are the ones that I really want to see with KO in hand, because it's often the case that we'll see a couple of different agents come into the pool, and we'll think, okay, I understand, this is how you play that agent. And it's teams like FPX, like Fnatic, or like Jonas playing Phoenix for a week that completely break down one of those walls and show this whole new way to play that agent. Fuck Jonas, man. By the way, those shock darts, the pimp my lineup shock darts, The fuck was that on Icebox, bro? You're bouncing it off walls, off everything. It's crazy. And like when I was playing this originally, I was a Sova main in the beta. I didn't even know you could do incremental. I thought it had to be full charge all the time. So I had lineups that took like 40 seconds to go across the map and land a certain place. And then I find your videos and you're just like, yeah, so you just bounce this one off that and this one over there and you'll kill 6 guys. What? What's going on?
It's also to see if Fnatic are going to keep their breach as well in their lineups too, because they brought that newly when they had that blind out in the qualifiers. Apparently, somebody in the chat said that Dream actually says that Boaster said KO is shit. Maybe he's just saying that to troll, because I think KO is fucking awesome. We'll have a chance to talk about that later.
Interesting.
Can we have a look at the bracket again? Because I want to ask, I want to ask you a question at least about what we should expect from this BDS 10-star game and this Ricks versus Giants matchup, because obviously BDS were much stronger it felt like they were much stronger in the first part of the year. This all French roster. What do we think about that first match here? Because obviously these are 10-star obviously rising to a level of fame in a much more recent time frame. How are we expecting that to go? Do we have expectations for that first match?
I think my expectation is that 10-star will win it. I think BDS are kind of getting stale at this point, and their addition of Gatch only further confirms that, or maybe says that there's some sort of a restriction on another player traveling or playing or whatever it is. For me, BDS is sort of on the way out. They need to refresh and find a new perspective. Maybe Gatch is going to be it, but I really don't know what to expect from them, whereas 10-star play a very good strategic game, and they're incredible individually. So I would put them as the team to take it across the line and put BDS to the lower bracket.
Okay. And then what about this Giants versus Ricks GG Thunder matchup?
I don't know what I make of Ricks at the moment, to be honest. Like, in terms of the talent there, I can tell you a lot of the guys that are on that roster are players that we had scouted and that I would have happily taken onto the team, just that things didn't go that way. Latex in particular as a controller always caught my eye, but he's now expanded to playing pretty much fucking every agent out there. Autumn, Fry. I remember literally every single one of these players I remember shouting about and thinking they were incredible. Mickey Boy as well. I don't think he's gotten nearly the recognition, because like Fry, Autumn, Lizard, they played in the UK scene for a long time. A lot of people, at least a lot of the, like my network, would know them pretty well. Latex played on, what was the team he played on? It was Fabrican. Yeah, indeed. Back in the day. And
the Swedish mix, yeah.
Yeah, those are obviously a big name in the beta, so people know him. But Mickey Boy kind of flew under the radar a little bit. But I can tell you he is spot on when it comes to, like, he was one of the reasons that Honk were such a scary team to face in a lot of these open qualifiers when we first saw them come out. So I could see them doing a lot of damage. On paper, I'd probably put them to win that, but I still haven't fully formed an opinion on Giants. Like, I still think it's kind of a messy mix that won't go the distance, but with the results that they put up, maybe I need to recheck that. That's going to be a real litmus test of these teams.
Now, Vitality qualified, and not only qualified, they knocked out a bunch of sort of favorite teams, right? Heretics get knocked out by them. Also Wave, who are sort of, again, still on the cusp of making their way into the top tier. They got up against Team Liquid here. Do we really expect this to be a close match? I think that a lot of people are favoring Liquid in this head-to-head, but Vitality have been, continuing to grow stronger, I feel. Especially that Lithuanian duo.
Liquid are going to get smashed.
Look really good.
Liquid are pretty ready, Jonas. My boy Shalak, he's going to come in and fuck them up. Guaranteed.
I mean, I'll be honest. I'm worried about Soulcast and his wrists, because I was there today. I was there yesterday. Had some food and stuff, and to see him walking around, and it's one of those things when, okay, let's say you get an injury, but it starts to feel better, but it does something to you mentally as well. So I think Soulcast is one of those players that on a good day, I think he's got how some players have a really good average, but it's because their top is insane and then their bottom can be the other way. And I think Soulcast is one of those who are like very affected by his current mental state. If he's having a good day, if he's feeling team spirit, if the entire team is calming, I think he's one of the best players in the world. And his Sky has been phenomenal. How much it has improved since we saw him play in November and December. And I am wondering if this is something that is going to bring him down, or if this is something that is going to like teach him how to fix it and make him stronger.
Mhm.
And having watched the team over the past months in their scrims and in their team, Sliggy's work is just out of this world. Like his Google Docs of counter strats is worth a lot of money. Like if someone finds that, because he has these slides he will go through before every match and be like, this is what you have to do. They put the suck here and they do this. So if you wait here, the recon won't scan you, and then you can go. Like it's so detailed.
It's like a primer on
before.
every team.
And he's got one on every team. He's just got this giant Google Docs that. Yeah.
And that's thanks to Bacon as well, too, though, right? House Bacon, their analyst that joined as well, is another one that doesn't sleep and lives and breathes Valorant to help out Sliggy as well. So there's a when we think about Sideshow that watches a lot of VODs for NA and EU just to talk about it, when you have to sweat even more to try to learn strats and how to counter strat, I think Sliggy and Bacon are definitely two people that are putting a lot of work into what Liquid's developing right now. Is it the right solution so far? Maybe not yet, because we don't see we don't know that consistency yet from Liquid or not in terms of the results, but hopefully in time it's going to pay off.
It was a brutal challenges one for both Fnatic and Liquid. I think we saw the resurgence of Ascend as well. Be reminded of just how scary that team is, and CNET is just so far ahead of the rest of the world that it's kind of scary at the moment. He actually, so I was watching a stream. He has an average of 1 kill per round. The next closest person is 0.9. And like there's a bunch of players at like 0.85, 0.9, but he is like 0.1 kills per round ahead of the curve, which is by a significant margin. That is a huge amount. So
consider
he's crazy.
What he plays. Like the fact that this guy plays an entry on attack side, like if you're playing a split, if you're playing an ascent, that operator's a lot of the time a write-off, and he's going to be the one dashing through, maybe not through Cypher utility anymore, but through utility into sites, opening up and probably getting fucked on. But he isn't the majority of the time. That's the thing about CNET, man. It's his ability to enter a situation that if you look at it and you assess the odds, it's like, okay, 9 times out of 10 you do this, you're going to die with no kills, but your teammates will trade you and hopefully the round will go your way. He goes in and aces the round. Like 9 times out of 10, he just reverses the statistics. And you're wondering, how the hell does this guy do it? And I still don't know. I played Knockout City with him. He was fucking destroying people there as well. They were just passing dodgeballs to him and letting him fuck everybody. I don't know what this guy does.
Knockout City, come on, let's not
game is sick.
Not get too far ahead in terms of like, oh, Knockout City, he's gonna win Masters.
If you're good at Knockout City, you're gonna win champions. That is.
I was waiting for a hashtag ad because the only people who play that game is Anyway,
it's a fun game. I enjoy it.
Fun, yeah, I'm sure.
All right. So moving ahead, Jonas, what's coming up for you, man? What can we expect to see from you in the coming weeks?
Let's see. So I've just been stuck on a Rust OTV server for a few weeks. I just got my European sleep schedule back. I've been kind of networking and having fun doing something else and just playing Valorant. It was a nice little break, and it's nice to meet new people. So currently I'm doing some really exciting commercials and projects. I just finished my rebrand, so there's a lot of cool things coming up that I really can't say anything about. That's typical. And if anyone's interested, tomorrow I'm doing a Beat Saber marathon on Expert Plus to see how many I can do in a row. So for those who are interested in to see how physical activity and gaming can be combined, you should come by and watch my sweaty bicep tomorrow.
Nice.
Other than that,
tank top, short shorts. I want it.
Other than that, currently we're not allowed to watch party the next part of the main event, so I'll be watching it on the sidelines. I'm not part of the broadcast. I willingly said no back a while ago, and I still think that was the correct choice for me personally. And I'm really excited to see new people like Twiggy and so on get into the scene. I think his casting is really good, and I'm really happy to see that Europe is starting to get these profiles. I'm so happy for Kakuka as well, who's been my friend since the first ever play test. And we've been very close friends, and I'm so excited that she got the opportunity to cast in English because she casted in Spanish for so long, and to see that it's going really well for her makes me really happy. So, I think I'm just going to sign off by saying I'm happy to see that the EU scene is thriving. We have more orgs coming in, more teams coming in, and the level is increasing, and NA is only going to stay supreme for so long.
I love to hear it. Thanks
We'll see.
Thanks for coming on, Jonas. Always a pleasure to have you. And we'll be back after the break, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be talking a little bit more about NA. We'll get Dream on board. But for now, we're going to take a quick break. So we'll see you on the other side of these messages.
Thanks, Jonas.
And welcome back, everybody, to Valoranting on the other side of our mid-show break. We just had AverageJonas on to talk a little bit about the EU VCT, and I'm telling you, that main event is going to be pretty darn exciting coming up soon. North America has also been quite the interesting kettle of fish to boil, and to help us break down all that action, we've got Vance, of course. Mitch is going to be here, but also we're bringing back to the show once again, Dream, joining us, of course, coaching staff from Cloud9. White, thank you so much for coming on again, man. It's great to have you.
Absolutely. I always love being on. I'm excited to talk about some NA stuff that's been going on, man.
Love the fact that you changed the setup of your microphone and everything now, too.
Yeah. Yeah, I was having some technical difficulties initially with vMix, but the producers helped me out, so, you know, we're looking good.
Nice.
We even got a pop filter on there. You'd love to see it. Hey, so I'm not very creative, and I did this in the start of the EU segment, but I want to talk about KO again because we actually saw a pretty decent amount of it.
Yeah.
And Vansili is convinced that KO is good, that this kit is legit, and people should be using more, right, Vance?
Yeah, I definitely believe so. I definitely believe so. I mean, we have a clip here that we're going to probably look at Zeppa, and maybe Zeppa is not the best example of using KO, but let's look at KO overall. What role does he play? He plays the role of the initiator. So yes, we talk about his kit where, yeah, the single flashes could potentially replace a duelist or whatnot, but the rest of his kit is really defined to be an initiator. So if I'm going to be running a null command, I should stay probably the third or fourth person entering into the site and not the first person ulting and pop flashing in to get picked off. And I feel that if you're able to use his kit correctly, such as the 0 point, which is a knife, and an ult command, which is the ultimate, and utilize other abilities around there. So leveraging your teammates, you need a lot more teamwork and communication into that, and to develop the strat a little bit more for a more set hit to be able to get into these sites rather than just trying to do these individual plays. Then we'll see more usefulness for KO. I think the biggest example and the best example that I've seen of KO throughout this weekend, throughout the open qualifiers, should I say, is with Dark Zero Esports, where we actually saw a very nice setup on a retake of the Haven for Dark Zero. That's where actually you had, I think Screwface was playing it as a KO, which is another thing. I think Screwface should have stayed as a Jet, by the way, but playing as a KO right now into this comp, and the way that he sets up the molly right here with Anderson's snake bites. Then you had shock darts coming in. You had sucks coming in from the grav wells. You had even his KO knife that was thrown towards sewers just to retake a site over against TSM that was very oppressive. It was very, very nice. And the reason why I like the molly from Screwface more than any other molly, let's look at the hot hands. The hot hands doesn't go as far as where potentially he wants to throw a KO fragment. The molly takes a while because I have a feeling that it's probably the same distance as a double recon dart, and it has to bounce and blow up. The snakebite's already in there. And what other mollies do we have? I think the best one there is looking at KO once again to put that as a group. So to think about him as an initiator, to use that role as the initiator, to help your team get into a site and elaborate your strat on the hit, then you'll see a lot more, which is, the reason why I think KO is still a great agent, and that team should look into evolving that a little bit more into his kit, thinking that he should play the initiator role and not the contact duelist opener role.
I hate events. I really do.
Makes sense, right?
I hate your ability to sit down and literally just list off. I'm a silly Counter-Strike play-by-play, right? I come in. Oh, look, he's used his ulti. Oh, he's thrown his nade, and you're like fragment, null command, point entry. Like, you got all of that shit. It just slips in. I'd be sat there like it's the null command. That's the one. What the fuck is this, man? How do you?
I mean, this motherfucker was a play-by-play cast until I forced him to do color for me.
Yeah,
You know
true,
what I mean?
true.
Pissing
And now
me off,
I'm
Vance.
full-time color.
You're making me look like an asshole.
Listen, man, it still slips on broadcast. I still can't say fucking poison cloud off my tongue. I always say like viper cloud all the time, but you know, we'll get there.
I forget
poison
who it
orb,
was.
actually.
I heard somebody say null CMD on cast when I was watching some of the VODs back, and I was like, oh!
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's certainly a CMD prompt, you know?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I have similar feelings, Vans, both on like the strength of KO and the different teams we saw using KO in NA. I definitely think Dark Zero used it the best.
Yeah.
I think that I probably liked Andbox's use of it the least. particularly on Haven. I felt that they were doing some pretty basic stuff, but Dark Zero, I felt like really had a lot of pretty elaborate set pieces around their very heavy util comp. But the comp they're using, the triple initiator double controller,
I love it.
I think is very, very good. I think it's good on Haven and Ascent and potentially Bind as well. I think we're going to see more teams playing it. I think you can cut one of the initiators if you want and put in a flex roll, something like a Sage or a Jet, depending on what your players are comfortable with. But I really, really like this. I do think that overall, KO still has a lot of development that has to happen.
Yes.
I think we're still kind of at like, we've gone down one layer, right? We had like the surface layer where everyone's throwing the normal like knife to hit as much of sight as possible, right? Or using the basic default knife. Now people have figured out something to do against that. And then teams that run KO have like their like counter play thing, right? And that is how far we have developed. That is the only distance that we have gained. So I think there's a lot more learning to do. When we talk about some of the matches later, I'll give some specific examples, like with TSM, where I think they were playing around enemy KO pretty well. But I do think that if you take just a normal comp and try and slot just KO into it, it can be kind of awkward, especially because of how absolutely busted Sky is right now. I think Sky is just insane. It feels bad to skip Sky. I'm at the point where I almost want to just go back to running Sky on Icebox because she's so good and that's her worst map in my opinion. I think she's just insane. So because of that, that's why I think you end up getting forced into triple initiator in a lot of situations, because it still feels hard to skip drone on some maps because of how good the op is now as well. So there's kind of a lot of competing things going on, but there's a lot we have to learn. Yeah, and for example here, Sonics versus Ghost, they did both play the KO here on Split, which a lot of people, like everyone keeps saying it's his best map. I'm not so sure. I think it's not a bad map for him, but the jury's still out for me. But I was not particularly impressed with either of these teams' KO usage. Again, I feel like they weren't even at the one layer down. We were still just at surface layer. We have like hilarious lineups. We yeet the knife 50 feet in the air. We yeet the frag, and then we just run into the site with an omen blind. And like, I think that is bad. I think that is not how this character is supposed to work. I think that KO has a very specific rhythm that you have to play. And I think that if people remember back earlier in the game, there was like a clip of Hiko that got a lot of traction where he's talking about like Sova Dart, Omen Smoke, all these things that regen, and you exec sites on a rhythm, right? You use your first round of util early in the round, get map control default, and then your next increment happens, and that's when the next bit of action happens, right? KO needs to be out of rhythm. KO does not want to operate on the same rhythm as
that same cadence.
Everyone else. Yeah, he has a different cadence. So having two other initiators allows you to have the Sova and the Sky, which gives you tons of map control, tons of defaulting potential, and you can be greedy with that knife. And that is what I think really enables and unlocks that KO a lot. Plus, initiators have the best ults in the game. Now you have the best ults in the game. So I think it gives you a lot of power.
So about the ult though, because I know Mike's is gonna fucking laugh about that, because we were doing a watch party, so as Mike's, Wyatt, Sideshow, myself, and Ryan Central are watching. Every time that somebody popped an ult command as KO, they instantly got knocked down. You used to just see a fucking KO on their knees.
You are not supposed to entry with this ultimate.
Exactly. And the reason why I say it's a strong ult, maybe not the best ult, but it's still a very strong ult, is that the radius of it is probably about the same width as a Spike or a Killjoy ult, right? Sure. So it does create a huge area of I guess suppression or oppression rather. Suppression, yes, it is. So let's say if you hide in a corner as an initiator and you're going to be the fourth person coming in or being the one playing the pulse plant, then it's going to be a little bit easier for the other members of your team to get into the site and not you being the person that's going to run into the site. Because when you get knocked down, nobody's suppressed anymore. Then they just throw their abilities right back again. So you've basically made the null command literally null at that point. So again, I think agreeing with Dream is that we've only scratched the first layer. But again, if you're able to get deeper into how you could actually scale up the abilities from the KO with the other people into your composition, then KO is definitely going to be not necessarily a must pick, but a good pick that could still bring a lot of good winning victories, I guess, for your team.
The surprising thing for me was how infrequently we saw the KO used to counter a Sentinel player, someone who's like very comfortable in the role. Like going throughout the open qualifiers, we still saw multiple games where we would have like a Killjoy who was comfortably playing Alarm Bot, Nano's close on, let's say, split B site, for example. You can't do that. Like if you're against a KO, they're gonna knife you, you're fucked. Like it doesn't matter where they hit that knife. Your utility's gone, it's revealed, they destroy it. You know, credits are just going down the drain. And I think that for the most part, going through the open calls, whenever we saw him, and it was really only NIP that we saw in EU use him, it just felt like similar to what you were saying a second ago, Dream, that like you don't use. I was watching it going, that's not how that's not how you should be using him right here, because they put him on Rhyme and they just used him like he was a Phoenix, and it pissed me off.
Yeah, okay, but okay, if you're playing triple initiator double controller, who is entering then?
I literally was just replying to Lord Lexus on that. I was going to say, like, I was just saying that to Lord Lexus. Your Omen, your Sage, your Sky are going to become the people that's going to start entering right now, because Sky could actually just run in, gun up and then flash right after whenever she wants to. Like, at that point, when you've already thrown your dart, or you've already thrown your Trailblazer in, then what's left in terms of the ability to go in? You use your Sky Flashes, the guided lights, to actually initiate for your teams, but you're also running in as that, I guess, second entry, first entry duelist as a Sky. So there's a lot that you could do right now with Sky as an initiator. We talk about how KO could be initiator / duelist, Sky could be the initiator / duelist. Omen could be the controller / duelist entry as well, because once you pop those 2 smokes into the site and you throw your paranoia in, what else do you have? You have to go in and fucking fight with your team. You cannot stay back. So there's a lot that you could do in terms of, like, we get back to the ability dumps on executes, but it's how you're going to be able to make it in without having a duelist in your comp. Why are some teams playing, like, it's the same question that you would ask if you're playing a composition that doesn't have a duelist right now, who's going to be entering? You're going to have a role of somebody else within that's not a duelist that's going to have to get it into that site.
Duelist, so your point is moot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing is, when you have a composition where everyone on the team has like really valuable util, then kind of no one on the team has valuable util when you're thinking about who should be the one to run through a smoke, right? Or you can just have ideas where it's like, hey, I'm just going to use all of my util, and then I'm going to be the entry, right? Like, I personally think Omen outside of Split, and then if you're doing some 100 Thieves shit on Icebox, is still a trash character, and you should not play him. And Astra is infinitely better, especially in these kinds of comps. But I think,
George
for
Cadet
example,
just loved you right here if he was listening right now.
Yeah,
you can pop your Astra stars, right? Because your suck is on such a long cooldown now, right? So I don't have a problem with you using your suck to enter site and then not trying to run back off of site and use another suck in 30 seconds to pull someone off the defuse, right? I think it's fine to run in. Or you can use your Sova shock darts to break Sentinel util and use your drone and then run in the site after and stay in the site. Obviously, you can't follow your own drone into the site, but I think there's a lot of situations where you can have one of your characters just have used basically all of their util and function as your duelist, as long as you have a player that is confident and knows how they need to path when they want to entry into the site.
Yep.
All right, so spent a bit of time on discussing KO, which has been great. Let's talk a little bit about some of these like round of 16 matches before we get into the meat and potatoes of it, because we get a matchup between Sonics, who, you know, are a team that can take maps off Sentinels. We've seen that going up against Ghost, who impressed us, I think, a lot in the last Challengers run. So let's go over it. Obviously, we saw on Split, we saw a bit of KO, but we're going to cover Breeze first, which ended up being a fairly close one. I think these two teams are playing the exact same comps, right? So it's going to be the Viper and Sky with the Cypher and Jets.
Yeah, I think overall, when I'm looking at this composition for Ghost, is I do have to commend Kaplan with what he's been doing with this team so far. Because when you actually look at it, yes, there's a Sky in here on Breeze, but who's playing that Sky? it's actually Nismo. It's not Win. And who's actually opping? It's not Win, it's Koala Noob. So there's been a little bit of change in terms of like agent pool being a little bit deeper in that. We always thought about Nismo being like this demon Raze player right now for who did it play before? Noble, I can't remember exactly. But Nismo was like this cracked Raze player, but to see him still excel as a Sky, to see that Win is also able to go back to what he played in the beta days with Gen G as a Silva or a Sky, depending on the maps. Overall, this team for Ghost gels really, really, really well. It goes back to that same of like, when I thought that Immortals and LG were going to be those two teams that are going to be on the come up at the end of 2020, and it kind of slowly fell off. Ghost for me is definitely one that has been looking a lot better within the past few tournaments. And to see them get this win against Sonics, honestly, for me, is not really an upset at this matchup. I think it was pretty even overall.
I agree. I think that I could have seen either team taking this. I don't think Sonics was particularly favored, and I'm good buddies with Kaplan. Talk to him a lot, so definitely agree. Shouts out Kaplan. As far as Nismo, I mean, I've talked to Kaplan about this. They really, really like putting Nismo on roles where he has some freedom. He can make some plays. He can look for openings himself because he just has a really, really good sense for that. And Sky obviously fits that bill really well right now. For a while, they were even trying him on Yoru on Breeze, actually, just to let him go wild a little bit, but they pulled back on that. I do think that Breeze and Split as well, but it was very, very close. And I really think it comes down to Ghost being able to get solid runs on each map on like the weaker side. So for example, on Breeze, they win pistol. On CT, which is traditionally the weak side on Breeze, right? It's a pretty T-sided map in my experience. They win pistol, they win the next round, and then they win their bonus off of a B retake. They played B on retake with that Viper wall we were talking about earlier that a lot of teams have been doing to retake that site. But Chase on Cypher just has a Marshall, is retaking late from arches and just kills two people with the Marshall, just headshots, and totally changes the round from a 4v4 retake where they have no business winning to they win, and it allows them to steal a streak of rounds. On CT side, and on Split, it was a similar thing. They won the pistol on T side, won the second round. Then in the third round, Koala gets a crazy push and a lurk through B heaven, goes behind them in A heaven during the A hit side, gets 4 kills in the round, and just clutches the round. So
as an omen, by the way.
As an omen, yes, as an omen, which Koala has started playing, kind of old school Mame-esque with the opping omen.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that it really could have gone either way, and that those very important swing rounds went the way of Ghost because of some good individual play. And I think just in general, Koala isn't the most consistent player. I don't think he's like super inconsistent, but he's not one of those pop-off duelists that you just expect to pop off every time, right? Like a Yay or something. But when he's having a good day, they are a legitimately scary team. And I think that, like you said, they're just going to continue to improve. I think they got a lot of intelligence on that roster, not just coming from the coach, but also from the players themselves. They got some smart players.
I feel it's what we say to a lot of these fucking duelist oppers or just duelists in general. It's like, if you have a good day, unfucking stoppable, because the duelists are just going to fucking pop off. But yeah, I think it's a story that we have currently for a lot of these teams where, you know, we always think about potential wins here.
For sure.
This is this ridiculous series between Andbox and TSM. My God. So the third map is the most ridiculous one, of course. I've never seen 14 overtime rounds before, but even Split does go the distance here. This is great. I mean, Bang is playing Astra on this map. We see that we have Sabrosa, of course, on the Sky. What a series this was in general. I got to catch half of this map and the last map here. Really, it was fucking wild, man.
Yeah,
it's good to see Levi as well. Looks like he's settling in.
Yeah, TSM is looking pretty good, but I'll let you start, Dream.
I mean, the one thing I did want to talk about for KO actually happened on Haven, where Andbox ran it. They ran kind of the OG Vision Strikers comp, but instead of Breach, they ran KO. I think that's bad. I think that KO cannot set up execs with any near like the strength of a breach. But the one strength is if you want to have your jet op, it's less punishing because KO is a lot more self-sufficient than the breach. But the big thing to point out is how TSM was prepared to play against the KO. So a really great example is with the layers that we're talking about is the knife that everyone likes to do when they hit C site, just hits the default box around where you plant, hits almost all of site. And we saw Hazed hiding as the Killjoy in the close left corner of site in what's normally a suicide angle to dodge the knife, and he stopped sight hits doing that like 2 or 3 rounds and won them rounds doing that, right? Exactly. And they think the knife clears sight. And then we'll talk about this in a minute, but there were adaptations in TSM's next series as well around the KO on Haven. But that was really good. What impressed me a lot on Haven, obviously Rosa just hard carried some rounds. On Sky, he looks really, really good on Sky right now. And then I think Hazed also had a super good map. I think he just had a really good couple of series. He's honestly playing really well. But on Split, Leviathan was so good, man. His Viper on T side, his lurks were so good. He made, as a team, TSM made it so Twyfo's utility got so little value. They were spamming and breaking his trips in A main. Leviathan would lurk up behind his wall into A heaven so he could get behind the ropes trip and like peek up out of ropes and kill people. So then they had to start putting a trip in the ramps to A heaven walk in. They're breaking his cam every round. They just made Twyfo's life hell as far as a Cypher wanting to rely on his utility. And that felt really, really strong. But honestly, for the series as a whole, I really felt like if Ye or Twyfo weren't carrying the round, the Exet lost. Or I'm sorry, the Andbox lost. It did not feel good. Mata had a couple of good rounds, particularly on Split. They won an eco round because he had a really sick raise ult from A ramps that helped them win an eco round. They won a T side round where he walked into a Viper ult and just took a big old dump on Leviathan and won them the round off of that. But overall, if Ye or Twyfo weren't carrying the round, it wasn't happening. And that went even into the Split OT as well. Ye just decided that they were gonna win.
Yeah, and I even think that there was some shenanigans in Icebox that made the scoreline what it was, because I think at this point TSM should have already won. I think there was like 1 or 2 rounds where TSM actually just let Andbox full defuse.
They didn't defuse. They didn't stop the defuse.
Exactly. So that forced the overtime coming in too. So that was like, little question mark here and there of how TSM like kind of like shit the bed in those rounds, but thankfully they made it through. What I do like about TSM as well is that when they initially picked up Bang, they said in that TSM interview, we're actually here. We need to have somebody a little bit more. Did I freeze? I guess I froze. But
you got to restart your camera.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll finish the point first. Thanks, Mitch, man, for. But actually, it's a cute look. It's a cute look. I'm not gonna lie. But Bang, when they said they brought him in, they said we needed somebody a little bit more aggressive. That's gonna work out pretty well for the team. And they picked up another duelist when the duelist was not an issue for TSM. But to see Bang being able to play a controller again for TSM and to thrive as a controller as well. Hopefully, he's going to realize that he is an important factor for TSM as a controller player, too, when I'm pretty sure he mentioned in a past way he did enjoy playing Omen with On The Way. But now to see the results that they're able to carry right now by fixing the little mistakes that they're able to do against that they did against Andbox, I think TSM overall will look pretty decent. Are they going to be top contender to where they were last year? Maybe not yet. They still have to iron out a few things, but at least they're on a good positive trajectory. Let me restart with that.
Speaking of trajectory, and maybe not a positive one though, the Heretics of NRG end up losing to Resonate in the round of 32. I don't even think this one was streamed, so we have stats. I guess we can just sort of show you guys here. We can maybe talk about this a bit more broadly, but this for a roster that is theoretically as stacked as NRG, especially with that recent addition of Weebid, this is another tough blow for a roster, I think, that generated very high expectations just for existing.
Well, what can we make out of this, right? So, sorry, Dream. I'll just go real quick because we don't have a VOD, so we're just gonna be like scoreboard Danny's out of these one, and try to figure out.
Scoreboard Stevens. You can't just stick a random name. It has to have the same starting. It's supposed to be fucking alliteration.
Scoreboard
mate.
Samuel.
Scoreboard, thank you. Jesus
Scoreboard
Christ,
Sandies.
You don't just pick a fucking name and stick it at the end of it. That's not how this works.
Yeah, but then
mate.
Scoreboard
Fucking
Sandies
boomer.
or Scoreboard Dannies, it kind of fucking rhymes at the same time too. So I was like on a different level at the same time. So whatever. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, the
All I'm saying is that losing Daps right now and not having an IGL for this team, I think they're still they've lost a lot with losing Daps. We did, yes, is a good addition in my opinion, but is it the answer of what they're looking for right now? Who's calling right now? Is it EU calling right now?
I mean, that's my assumption. I don't know if we've heard any definitive information, but I mean, I agree. It seems like there's something lacking. I don't know if it's an IGL issue. It might just be like they've got people moving around on roles. I mean, EU's obviously staying kind of consistent, but Weedid's playing Cypher. Like, I don't really understand what's up with that. So, and Android's been playing Viper. He's actually pretty solid at Viper, though. I'm not gonna lie. I like Android's Viper, but I think it's just more of one of those times where there's been a ton of changes happening. They had like Chet depart, obviously, and then Josh RT come in. They've got a ton of talent, and I think they just have had so much change that they need to be able to like sit down and build an identity and like figure out who they are as a team. But it's really hard to do that with like the pace that the scene is moving at, right? You don't really have that time to do that. They've just been having to constantly compete. So I think that this roster obviously still has a ton of potential, insane amount of talent. I think that they just need some time to figure out what their identity is, what they want their play style to be, and how everyone's going to settle into their different roles, a little less musical chairs.
Has been a lot of changes ever since, right? And all at once at that point too. So, and you're looking at other rosters. Sorry, exactly. And you're looking at other rosters right now, trying to like get into like fixing their issues is always one thing at a time. But unfortunately for Energy is like everything at once. And thank you, chat. By the way, it's Som that's currently calling for the team too, right? So you have a different IGL, different coaches coming in, change of fucking identity in terms of agent pool. Because right now you literally talked about it, a dream. It's Android playing as a Viper, where we always like gave we always praise Weedid as being like one of the best Vipers when he first was using that agent. Exactly, the OG going in, and Jammy started using it, then Mitch
he
Ben
reckons he was copying Poach.
Sorry?
I remember that. Weedid was copying Poach on the Viper.
Exactly, right? And then suddenly it's gonna be Android that's like the main fragger for the team that's been like a star duelist for Andbox before, coming in to potentially be the star duelist with Tex as well in this roster. But it doesn't seem to be panning out quite well for them. So hopefully they're going to be able to find some sort of answer soon. But you know that I feel that clock is ticking for this team, for this organization as well. It's been what, like 6 months that we're trying to find at least some sort of like good results.
I mean, what clock? What's the deadline? Aren't they like done for the year? I don't think they go to last chance qualifier, right?
I don't think so. There's their whole roster changes.
If there was a clock, it's already expired.
They're just fucking around like the rest of us.
Well, it's not for them time to play some fucking Nursery Gamers Monthly, man. Something, you know?
They can't. Are they allowed to?
I think they're one of the teams that can.
I don't know one way or the other, but I assume that if you're like knocked out and you can't go to like the regional finals or last chance qualifier, I feel like at that point, like the season is over for the year for you. You should be able to start playing in these events, or you just have to literally wait until January. That sounds pretty terrible.
That's bizarre.
Sounds like an EU team
for an exemption. That was the case.
And then monthlies. What does this monthlies talk about? We don't have shit.
Monthlies. I mean, we have 3 different weeklies running every week.
Yeah,
my
man.
guys.
Yeah.
Look at this.
I mean, shit, ESL has a platform. I don't know why they can't run like a Go For or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's
Go For
probably because of I don't know. Is it because there's such a big identity with licensing and all that with Riot that they may have to pay more? There's a possibility. There's a possibility.
I'm telling you right now, you have to pay for the license fee, and then like it's expensive to run Valorant events. And
the
only reason
for
NSG
sure.
can do it is because they make money elsewhere.
But
they
they're
sure as hell don't make money on the fucking event itself.
Well, agreed.
Riot have some rather restrictive conditions. Now I don't know about maybe for lower prize pool stuff it's different, or if it's not in their like if it's not in their champion circuit,
Yeah,
so to speak.
and that's the thing.
Either way.
I think just to go on to the business talk is because like I know, for example, like Baby Bay, he's able to do like his Schmied Cup, right? He's had 2 of them so far. It's been under like the umbrella of like, hey, it's a small size event, small prize pool, total of 10,000 so far that he's done. I think because it was like 5,000 each one, right? So technically it's fine. But then I do remember when I was trying to do stuff with Steel Series and I wanted to run like a $10,000 prize pool, that wasn't allowed, and I had to pay Steel Series. Sorry, I had to pay a bigger licensing pool because of the brand that Steel Series represents, and then because they fall into this different category than others. So it's not just about the prize pool sometimes too, which is why I would assume that even if ESL wants to run like some monthlies or $1,000 prize pool, they probably still have to pay the higher umbrella because they represent a different entity. It's off those types of definitions
the
too.
thing I would say is that $1,000, or let's say if it's 5 or 10K, you will get the best teams in the world. Like, it's not going to be of the caliber of a 5 or 10K CS event if you do it in like November or so, because you're still going to get top 10, top 15 EU teams if you extend it to EMEA even further. I think the only problem there being ping, but I mean, you guys deal with that in the States. So I think that I think it's definitely within the wheelhouse of possibility for someone like ESL, Blast, We Play, these kind of big organizations, Star Ladder, big organizations to come in and run some tournaments. It's whether they want to, I suppose, would be more so the issue. Because in terms of viewership and player attendance, you wouldn't have to field that much in the prize pool that I'd say to probably make it worth your while to dump in and get the licensing fee.
I mean, I'm in the EU coaches Discord, and I don't think that Freaks for You is a super popular TO at the moment. So I think that if someone were to come in and start trying to run events and be like, hey, maybe we're going to elbow our way in and get the contract to run all the events next year, Riot is probably open to that, considering how poorly Freaks for You has been received by the community. So hopefully that type of incentive can get some extra events running. I don't know.
I say this all the time, but like it's worth bearing in mind that like I just want to make it very clear. The arrangement for the way that VCT works in NA doesn't work for the vast majority of TOs. Because not only do you have to pay a licensing fee, which is not necessarily uncommon, but Riot have certain sponsor categories that you cannot advertise in. Like you are restricted from getting your own sponsors in things like if they have Red Bull, for example, like as a sponsor for other events of theirs or whatever, you can't touch that category. You can't. So it becomes, so normally like, okay, people are used to paying a license fee. That's not the worst thing, but then they're also being hampered from actually advertising around their event. I've spoken to, I'll say Flashpoint, for example. You want to know why there's no Pot Flash Valorant? It's for that reason. Riot they drive a really hard bargain for running their events because Riot have always felt like they're the fucking progenitors of esports globally and that they can sort of call the shots. And it's a fucking raw deal for anybody who runs a conventional business model as a TO. Now, if you're Nerd Street Gamers and your revenue comes from people signing up and using your platform, not only for tournament admin, but for other stuff like finding groups to play with, then it's fine. They don't give a fuck if they have to run the event in a loss because they make money by people signing up to their platform. They don't have to give a shit about the fact that it is objectively financially a pretty awful decision for TOs. Riot have to know this. I'd like to see them extend, why do you think like, sorry, no offense to Nerd Street Gamers. I think they do a great job. They built from the ground up. They started with a grassroots focus, and now they have great people working on their production side. Why do you think the esports engine hasn't touched this? Why not Flashpoint? Why not, ESL's sort of token NA presence? Why not any of the other organizers in North America and in Europe? It's not favorable to do that. You know what I mean? And I think there's also the reality that TOs go, okay, all right, if we run these events at a loss, we're hoping that this is an investment on our part and that in the future we'll have a more fruitful partnership. Right, I'm going to take the whole thing in-house. So what's the point on spending money to run VCT events when Riot eventually going to go, nah, fuck it. And then, you know what?
Our turn.
They might even take a bunch of your staff with them as well. Because that's what happened when the LCS moved to Berlin. It was run by ESL in Cologne. They moved to Berlin. A bunch of the ESL staff went with them because, of course, that was the work they were already doing and it was a good offer.
Yeah.
Sorry. We're in an era now where for tournament organizers to offer that kind of service, it just doesn't make any sense because devs are taking the stuff in-house. That's all I'm going to say. So if Blast, it's the same for Blast. Why wouldn't Blast run a Valorant event? They might eventually, but it's hard to do it in a way that fucking makes sense, especially when you can't run a LAN right now, because you can't. That means you have no activations, you have no physical manifestations of sort of sponsored deals or anything like that. So if you're mad about the quality of your VCT experience, don't blame the TOs, because they're having to do it with fucking the smell of an oily rag. They're trying to run this shit. Blame the structure and how like the RFP process works for these events, because it goes deeper than just, like I saw there was like some thread of some twat lord just tweeting about how low quality like the Nerd Street Gamer stuff was, which I mean he was right. He was just an asshole about it. But it's like people are blaming these tournament organizers for not doing this extra stuff. It's because they don't have the resources to do it, because you know they run tournaments the way they do for a reason. They don't necessarily have the
and what
ability
they
to put it on.
and probably what they pitch in the RFP was what was accepted too, where it's like, oh well, maybe they don't need the player cams and stuff like that too, and Riot accepted that. So there's
Riot
a
are
lot
complicit in that.
Exactly,
100%. They have oversight for this stuff. Like they are involved. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about the teams that actually qualified for the
VCTs.
main. Fucking another rant. God, I just insert myself where I'm not needed. So we have 4 teams that are qualified for Challengers finals here in North America. So we have T1, FaZe Clan, TSM, and a little bit of an not an outsider, but a team that hasn't really been in the headlines as much lately, Luminosity. Auspiciously, C9 Blue failed to qualify for finals, which is that's a tough one. We'll get onto that one. Let's talk about this FaZe Clan matchup. Dark Zero, I think we were going to look at the Dark Zero one, or maybe the Ghost one, actually. The Dark Zero one was really interesting because I think 2 different players played KO, but we've already sort of hashed that pretty heavily. This is Ghost versus FaZe, and it was quite the series. I mean, speaks volumes to how far Ghost have come, and FaZe are still looking like they kind of always have, right? They're playing a bit of Astra, but it's still Corey on the Raze, Baby Bear on the Jet. Like, you know, nothing crazy, no reinvention of the wheel here with this FaZe team.
Yeah, I actually think that I'm seeing a decent difference out of FaZe with Baby J coming in. And what I feel like is that really heavy fragging core of Baby Bay and Corey, right? That everyone knows the legitimate superstar fraggers on this team.
Yep.
And Rock is kind of more of a flex role, kind of floats around, does what he needs to do, just fills gaps. But they really have those anchor type of players with Baby J and Zachary, those really smart players, those players with very good util usage and timing that can also frag out. So it feels like, even though Marv, I think, is an excellent player and is obviously doing well on Envy, I think that as far as the core of this team and how this team functions, FaZe is better set up for success and kind of in a more sustainable way with another supportive player instead of just all smeeging.
Yeah. I think for FaZe, like even Baby Bay mentioned it like in past interviews where, or I guess it was Marv, unfortunately, before he got picked off, is like they would tend to want to try to have different gears, right? And you see a little bit of old FaZe, you see a little bit of new FaZe depending on the map that they play. So for example, on Ascent, Baby J fits in quite well as a role as a lurk player right now for FaZe Clan, playing as a Sentinel. Although this time that they played versus Ghost, he played as a Killjoy instead of a Cypher, but it's still worked out okay, I guess. I'll talk about that in a bit. But then when you're talking about Bind, for example, they're going with that good old same strategy of where they got from Korea, not playing a Sentinel actually in the composition, using Astra. So Zachary playing as an Astra, putting all these stars, could definitely play the role of a Sentinel pretty much with how much oppression he could have as an Astra anchor player into an A site. And this allows Baby J to play the breach and play like the flash and dash if they actually wanted to here, to allow Baby Bay to play a little bit more aggressively. So again, those gears are starting to work out right now in this FaZe bicycle, and you're starting to see a little bit better development. You're starting to see Corey, I think, is the IGL for the team right now to find his form as well, to be able to frag and to be able to help out the team. Everybody's calling out once, I think, at this point, but one main leader going in for FaZe is going to have to be Corey for sure. But then when you look back at the first map versus Ghosts, I think that this matchup should have at least gone to a map 3, where then I don't know who's going to win this map between these two teams, between Ghost and FaZe, because I haven't seen them play on Breeze enough. And the reason why I say that it should have gone to a map 3 was that Ghost already looked very, very good on Ascent, actually. I said that it looked not bad to have Baby J as a Killjoy, but I think Ghost definitely had the lead up going into the second half, because they won their attacker site 8-4. in the pistol round, exactly what happens here. They had a beautiful and perfect retake, went down to the last second. You'll see the reaction of Vanity's face in this pistol round too.
Oh, man.
But when Huynh actually came in for the defuse, and he tweeted out later, look at this, it's at almost halfway before he actually slips away and hits the caps lock. And look at where he blows up. It would have actually probably diffused at that moment right there, where they would have potentially given Ghost an 11-4 lead going into the second half as defender side. So that's unfortunate. That's why it went into overtime, I think, in my opinion. It's not as bad. I think this slip up is worse than the NV 2 versus 0, because the 2 versus 0 for NV that didn't have the defuse, it was already probably pretty much set in stone that Envy was going to lose that map on Haven against 100 Thieves anyways. Is not because of that defuse, but I feel that this case for Ghost, that defuse was the cause of the loss of their map on Ascent.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
That's such a
agreed.
heartbreaker.
I mean, I think that even, obviously, that was just a terrible mistake to have happen and had a huge impact. I still think there are a couple rounds that could very easily go the other way, and Ghost takes that map.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be totally honest, and I'm friends with Kaplan, I'm friends with Raucus, I used to coach him, whatever. I do not think either of these teams are super strong within like talking about trying to get to the regional playoffs. I don't really think if Ghost had made it instead, I think that I would pick them to proceed in the bracket very similarly to FaZe. And I do think this new look of FaZe does show a lot of promise in a way that I didn't really expect Baby J coming in to give. I still think that it's going to take quite a while for them to get fleshed out enough to compete with the top teams in NA right now.
Agreed.
See how long it takes for them to sort of iterate on this style. It looks a bit more conservative, I think, than what we've seen from them in the past. I guess they're not in the mode of... it's interesting to see Zachary moving into Marv's role there, and Baby J obviously sort of taking his place. So development there for him. All right, let's talk about TSM. Obviously, the Andbox game is crazy. We already talked over that. Then the Dark Zero one is also pretty insane. Crazy to see how far this Dark Zero team have come, and they end up winning this Haven map here. This, I think, is the last round as they clutch it out. And this is obviously, we talked about Screwface's KO earlier on here, but great series, an absolute banger, really, from start to finish.
Sure.
They fall off a little bit on Icebox, but really these first two maps were great.
Yeah. I just, and I'll let Dream continue, but I talked about it a little bit before when we talked about Screwface on the on KO. I personally feel that they probably should have left Screwface on a Jet, especially if you want to go toe-to-toe with Wardell. And the escapability that you'd have for Screwface playing as the operator. Like, look at him. He's playing defender KO with an operator, trying to fucking ult and trying to get picked. Maybe it allows, as a counter pick, to not allow Wardell maybe to dash away if he misses a shot. But still, it's I still find that it's better for Screwface to play as a Jet into this roster and maybe use KO onto somebody else. But again, that goes deeper into if he's going to play this, then who's going to play what, right? But overall, I think we lost a bit of Screwface. He still played pretty well, but overall, I think it could have added a little bit more into the firepower of what Dark Zero had into this series. Anderson just fucking popped off on that first map, by the way.
Yeah, I feel like Anderson has just been playing so well. And way back in the day last year on Slimy Boogerman, Anderson gave us a really hard time, and I've been a big fan of him ever since. But as far as the decision not to run Jet, I mean, if you want to run the triple initiator double controller, ain't no room for a Jet in there. And I do think that Screwface and Dark Zero as a team played the best KO that I have seen, period, not just in NA. So I'm not super upset about it. I do think there's potential that whatever, he's very comfortable on Jet. He's a really good Jet player, so maybe he could get more impact there. But I think their general approach was fine. I really feel that there just wasn't enough pop off in the really important moments, and I felt like TSM really realized that they could abuse their strengths as a team and kind of get over some of their weaknesses of being a little bit of a newer roster.
Yeah.
In that they would, against this really, really high util comp, they just started dragging out the rounds until there were 20 seconds left, right? They were doing some Navi shit, right? Waiting till the absolute last second, forcing out all of your util, and then just relying on them having better pathing, better trades, better aim, and just winning in those really scrappy, skirmishy moments, knowing that that is their strength as a team. It's literally always been their strength as a team, and they're playing against a very util heavy comp. And that worked a lot. They did it on all 3 maps in the series on their T side, and the rounds they slowed down were very, very successful. So I felt like that if Dark Zero had maybe some more people stepping up. I think Harmon didn't have his best series. I think Kohler is still getting used to some of the stuff, like obviously KO on Icebox. I mean, I hate KO on Icebox. This was terrible. They literally can't do anything. It's so bad. So on T side, it's not that bad because, you know, whatever you do, your default, you drone up or whatever, you get some space, you get close to the site, and then you knife the site so they can't use a bunch of stall util. Then you can get the bomb down safely. All right, fine. What the fuck do you do with a KO on CT side? It's literally a useless ass hero. Like the general Icebox comp, right? Like that everyone really plays is Jet, Sage, Viper. Who am I missing?
Jet, Sage, Viper. I see Reyna.
Jet,
I see
Sage,
Jet.
Viper. Well, Reyna and Killjoy is like the flex role, right?
Yeah.
That people fill depending on their
Sova?
Yeah, Sova. Thank you.
Sova.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
So that core 4 is the same, and then you have like that flex roll, right? And to me, that flex roll, it's obviously stylistic, but the biggest thing that matters for, and the reason you tend to see those 2 characters over anyone else, we're seeing a little more Raze, starting to see a little Sky, is mid control. Like people meme about mid doesn't matter on Icebox, but if you have your like Sova just AFK, like I dart mid and then 20 seconds later I drone mid, like you're wasting your Sova. That's really low value. Or if you're just using your Sage wall and tube every round and you don't have wall for a retake or wall to do an aggro play on one of the sites, that is an incredibly poor use of Sage in my opinion. So what happens when you have Reyna doesn't play mid, but Reyna is able to play solo or with very little assistance on A site, so that way you can put more human resources towards mid. Or if you have Killjoy, exactly. Or if you have Killjoy, you can use the Killjoy utility in mid, and then you have both, you know, tube, connector, kitchen. You have this whole area sort of covered. You have information. When you have a KO, you can do none of that. You do not have good map control. KO does not give you that ability. And TSM was like, we're just going to go A every round and you can't do anything because your comp sucks. And they were right.
Yeah, and the flashes don't do much, right, for the retakes either because, you know, there's just so many corners that you could hide behind. I find that the idea maybe with KO now in this matchup on Icebox is to try to fight against the pulse plant. If Silva's holding all the way towards the back of the site, or there's a Viper all the way back towards the site getting ready for her lineups, then hopefully the knife is going to be able to do something. But to be able to reach that point, you actually have to keep your KO alive up to that point as well, which is not something that's easy to do, not necessarily on Kohler himself, but as KO in general and how this map is being played. I find that overall in this matchup, though, between Dark Zero and TSM was really determined by that. You talked about players not really popping off on Dead Zone. Or what did I say? Dead Zone. I'm going back to 1.6. Dark Zero Esports is actually Wardell for TSM. If it wasn't for his 4K round with the operator on Ascent, that because they were actually losing Ascent so badly. Like if you're looking at this so far, there was like 7 rounds in the lead right now for Dark Zero Esports, and Wardell with the crack wall that he had, like placing it up towards the A main, leaving a slight crack, was able to catch off 3 kills before going for a Frost Orb 4th kill. That definitely gave the momentum for TSM to bring this back into the overtime. And you saw that translate over to Icebox, where they just, like you said, abused where the weaknesses were and just continually hit the sites where Bang just popped off as well as Arena.
In other news, Luminosity qualify here for a Challengers Finals. I think this is a team that's been trying to retool their approach for a little while, right?
Yeah.
A couple of roster changes. Obviously, Thief's not on the roster. They add Barn, who is really highly regarded, I think, by his sort of peers as a pretty frightening player. Also, Tig's on this team. Dazzle gets added, obviously comes over from Ghost here. Luminosity Gaming go up against Cloud9 Blue in this qualifying series here. And honestly, like, they look pretty good. I think your boy Dre has a great series in general.
Fuck. Your boy Dre and Ban fucking played super well, and your boy Dre going as a duelist, as Reyna, I'm happy for that. I think Tig did a really great job as well. Honestly, to not take anything away from LG, it's more on me now, definitely being on the hopium of what Cloud9 delivered the last qualifiers moving into this one, because Cloud9 for me,
blindsided by this?
I was definitely blindsided, probably by like how good Cloud9 used to look with not necessarily tens, but I think when they had relics and stuff, and Mitch playing as a sentinel, and Mitch wasn't calling, it was somebody else that was calling, like Shinobi instead. They looked pretty decent, but I feel that they've lost their footing right now for Cloud9 Blue in these matchups. And again, going back to, talking about it with the other boys when we were doing the watch party, is like Cloud9 we're hitting sites like every single round within like 20 seconds. Within 20 seconds, they've everybody's fighting into a site. There was no map control in terms of trying to bait out utilities, force rotations, a fake out to another site. Take Ascent, for example. If you see some players out towards B main and 3 guys are working up mid, what happens? Wall up, pinch into the B site. It's actually understood by LG. They play more passively. They just fuck everybody up, and then Cloud9 just fucking dies. If it wasn't for, like, I think, like clutch plays going on for one of the Cloud9 players, which the name slips off. I think it's Poise. Yeah, sorry, Poise on Ascent. He actually had to clutch like a 3-versus-1 to actually allow Cloud9 to get a couple of rounds into Ascent. But if not, it's just like they've lost their identity in IGLing. I think Mitch looked pretty good at first when he took that responsibility, but after they lost relics, and they're now bringing in this roster, and they now lost Floppy at the same time, where they have an agent ability, an agent crisis, I guess, in terms of who plays what. It's just like, okay, well, let's just fast hit, and it's just not paying out. Cloud9 definitely, like, the stonks have gone down for me, unfortunately.
I have a slightly different take. I definitely think C9 underperformed. For example, I think across both maps, Leaf used 1 res, I'm pretty sure.
Far out.
That's
That's
real
another
bad.
thing too. Leaf is playing a fucking Sage when he's like popping off his arrays.
I have no problem with Leaf playing Sage. You can frag incredibly hard on Sage. But my thing on Ascent is, I think Luminosity does deserve a lot of credit. It really, I'm not kidding, it seemed like they had fucking wall hacks on their CT side, bro. They knew exactly what to do. Your boy Dre had multiple rounds where he's just naked, walking out B main, walking up cat, walking up A main at the perfect timing, finds out where the gap is, gets 2 kills, and wins them the round. They also win a round on an eco because they have a crossfire between Market and Pizza, and they get this dumb deagle like 3K off of a crossfire. They have someone hiding close right outside of B main with a judge. I've never seen someone play there in my life. And they like dodge a flash, turn around, and get 3 or 4 kills. There were some extremely good reads coming out from LG. And I think that I think Dazzle is IGLing for them. I'm not 100% sure.
I think so too.
But that was good. But also part of that is, if you guys want to go back and watch the VOD, Cloud9's default is absolute dog shit. And if they do not use their KO knife in A main at the start of the round, they end B every round. Every single round. That is not okay. You can't do that. And that gave LG so much information, so that's how they were able to get so many easy ass reads. You cannot play that way.
Exactly. If you're saying like it looked like they had wall hacks playing the defender side, it's exactly that. It's because Cloud9 unfortunately was so one-dimensional and it was so easy to read. The fact that crossfire that you mentioned that they had on an eco for LG that allowed Ben to get like 2 or 3 share kills, pick up a rifle. He actually aced that round. And then if you're saying that Dre was able to walk around, he actually had 2 aces that series because, again, they knew where to push because they knew exactly what Cloud9 was going to do.
One of them was against Eco, bro.
Eco B main. But Eco B main, like 5 guys going against him. Like, I mean, somehow you got to get a trade in there, you know?
One of the things on the Luminosity side, actually, that I wanted to point out was Dre, because I watched back that game. And on both maps, you just saw the amount of freedom on the defensive side this guy had. Like, you mentioned a Dream already, pushing up on Ascent, getting the control in pretty much anywhere he wanted, right? But a lot of it was going to be a long and short. When it came to Icebox, it was the exact same thing. They were switching up a lot. And actually, an adaptation that I haven't seen that much in EU, which was having the Jet and the Reyna play on the B side of Icebox. And then on the A side, having your Viper go there just for the one round. Throws in a little bit of confusion for how your opponents are going to deal with it. Playing up against the Viper util there is obviously tough. That's why we see a lot of teams in EU now use the Viper util on A for the pistol, sometimes for the second and third round as well, even with Viper still playing B. But what they would do then is they would have Jet holding the long range angle, so they have an operator up, and then allow Reyna to push up close. And your boy Dre was taking so much space. It felt like he had really hit by the time they got to Icebox. He felt so comfortable in early round fights that he was just going for them wherever he could find them. Wherever the IGL would let him go, he was sending it there. And it's really dangerous when you get a player into that kind of comfort zone, which, I mean, snowballs you into the series most of the time.
Yeah, it was like he was in their heads, not in the sense of like they were afraid of him or they were thinking about him, but he literally just knew what they were going to do.
Yeah,
like,
read their thoughts.
It was just insane. But yeah, I mean, I think his comfort level, and again, I think we got to give credit to Dazzle for IGLing, but as well, a lot of these pushes are him finding really good timings. Or playing goofy angles. Like, I think a lot of it was your boy Dre just really kind of soul reading the shit out of them and playing super confidently. And I mean, you love to see it, honestly. That's just fun to watch.
And I think LG have always managed to get good value out of the loose end Reyna. It seems like it's been a part of, like, whether it's Thief or Dre, it has always seemed like it's kind of a defining characteristic of how they play. Getting a ton of value on like the loose side on Icebox, especially.
Yeah, for sure.
We're gonna move along. We've been here for 2.5 hours, but I want to highlight this. Yeah, I know, right? It's kind of wild. I want to highlight this this last series we want to cover, because T1 have qualified for Challengers Finals, which is great. We're actually starting to see this team make some progress. With Brax back on this roster. Now, BBG, obviously, maybe we're not talking about the most difficult of competition here, but the series still looked pretty darn good. I think, Icebox was a good example of what Dawn's able to get done here on this sort of Viper pick. I want to get you guys' take on just T1 in general now as they move ahead and from this series.
If I could start, then I definitely do have to commend Dawn actually playing as a Viper right now for this team. I think this series versus BBG, he had a couple of rounds where he saved T1 in these rounds too, and his holds have been pretty excellent. So I think right now, like, when we always had the question mark of who the hell is Dawn, or who the hell are these people coming in from T1 Academy that goes into all these different teams, and we always
to be fair, we even asked David Dennis and didn't get a straight answer. So
yeah, exactly, right? But in the end, like, as we commend like LG scouting, Immortal scouting, let's give it up to LG, to T1 at this point too. And I know it fucking kind of sucks that their coach is still a PUBG cheater that, kind of like hasn't served his sentence yet. But Curry did give a lot to the coaching staff in terms of David Denis and the cheater to help them actually play the way that they are right now. So I do find that T1 for me has been looking a lot better as well from their first iteration, where the staple Curry and Spawn as a Viper on Icebox playing as an IGL Reyna Lurk maybe didn't work out too well, but the other the other positions right now for T1 has been looking quite good on the maps.
Can Dawn not play Reyna?
Yeah. Dawn,
Dawn is not Bang, the young player coming in and then off-rolling Reyna randomly. I do think Dawn does deserve a lot of credit, though, and I think you look at like that Icebox map where he has pretty good stats, but I think the good stats even still do him a disservice, because a lot of those kills were like the most important kills in the round, or 2 and 3Ks that literally solo won rounds, and he's still going extremely positive, getting all of the high impact kills. So I think he deserves a ton of credit. But when we look at a map like Ascent and we look at this comp, I like it much, much more for T1. And the reason is I think Curry is a very good player. I think when Curry first started playing and moved over, I think he almost instantly became the best Viper player in NA. He was doing shit that I had never seen anyone do before in scrims. He was looking really, really good. So I think having him, like, basically him, Scott, and Brax all are very mechanically gifted, but they're also really fucking smart players. I don't want them on duelists. I want them on these fragging support characters, right?
Yeah.
Where Brax playing the Sova, there's that. Ska's playing Sky and Sage, both fragging supportive characters. I really like that. That's what I want to see. The one problem, the thing that I see stopping T1 from having those really high peaks is they don't have that player that I think can just pop off and solo win you a game against these really high level teams.
Yeah.
I don't think Automatic is there yet on Jet. I don't think he's unable to get there, but I think it's in like 2 days. I don't think he's going to stand up to, the absolute insane level that some of the other duelists in NA can bring, where they're just like, I have decided that we will win this round and you don't have anything that you can do about it, right? I don't think Tim is there yet. And I think also, I'm just going to be honest. I think Jet makes opping way easier. I think his opping still needs some work. I'm going to be real. But I think that's just a transition thing. Like, he was not a Jet player. I think that, again, if these changes had happened at a different time, or if there was more events to be played, I feel like T1 probably has enough performance this year to get to last chance quals. I don't know, but I feel like that's probably the case. And I think if that's the case, there is absolutely a chance that Tim gets to where he needs to be to at least be competitive at that point, right? I mean, he's not going to be the best Jet in NA or the best Jet in that tournament, but I think he can easily get to the level where they can beat anyone in that event.
Yeah.
Vans, there's a play you wanted to highlight from this series, actually a nice retake from T1. So why don't you walk us through that here? Because I know this one stood out to you.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll pause it from the beginning here, Daniel. And I just wanted to explain and mention at the same time that I do agree with Dream. Maybe Automatic is not going to be at that pop-off level yet, but I feel that plays like these would allow T1 to actually still have some good results because of the synergy that they have currently. So if we're looking at this minimap so far, pay attention to those blue dots, right? So we're looking at T1 on the defense. Tim is already setting up here as an operator, already anchored up towards spawn, and he doesn't need to push into spawn side yet. Why? Because our main focus is to try to take control of B main. What happens first here? So it's a Curry battle that he's going to be able to take against Will, but you look at where Ska is, the Sky at the mid-side pizza. He's throwing a Trailblazer towards B main, which is also going to flush out Bjor at B main. So after we win this battle against Will, we'll start rolling that clip, Daniel. We'll see that this kill happens, and then a Sky Flash is going to happen from Skadoodle all the way up from Pizza into B main. Off that, they go for the double swing to allow to get the kill onto Bjor. Bjor dies. What happens here? You ult with Dawn at the default spot of B site. That flushes now everybody else to be moving towards the spawn site where Automatic, yes, not a flashy op player, but easy kills for him to get the last 3 over here, and for T1 to actually have a beautiful retake on what? A 5 versus 4, and to win this round here for T1. Again, it's against BBG, but it's still a BBG that won 13 of 5 against Sentinels that are actually really prepared on this map of Ascent as well. So to see that T1 is as organized as the way that they are with the agents, as Dream mentioned, that they're excelling in those roles, it works out really well for this team.
Yeah, and I don't want to be rude to Tim at all, right? As far as his play in those matches we saw, he played well. He played well. I'm just thinking when he's playing against that really, really high level competition, they're going to put a lot more pressure on him. But I think he should absolutely be very proud of his performance. I think he did well. And that clip is one of many examples. He had a couple sick no scopes with the op as well. He had some good moments.
For sure.
You guys are already looking ahead. I do want to let us keep looking ahead now, because we're talking about what Automatic's next opposition or opponent's going to look like. Here's a close bracket. So it might be an easier question to ask you guys, sort of who doesn't advance through this.
KCP.
All right. So yeah. All right. Obviously, Pioneers had to go against Luminosity first. We have a FaZe Clan Rise matchup. Do we expect any spice from that one?
I don't think so.
That's a toss-up, bro. I'm saying it now. That's a toss-up. That's a 50-50.
I don't know, man. I don't know. as all the other 3 guys are going like this, like I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it too.
Because like for me, Rise, the best results that they've gone so far is that upset win versus Cloud9, and already I've gone through why I don't think Cloud9 unfortunately is on par as where I expect them for them to be. And to see how FaZe is doing pretty decently, I think if it was Rise versus FaZe or Rise versus Ghost, I think that the latter, Ghost or FaZe, would beat Rise at this point. KCP, I still believe in fraud, but I do think that LG should be able to take it, not with a walk in the park. I think Pioneers are going to be pretty good at like anti-stratting or understanding the playstyle Luminosity. How do you shut down Ben? How do you shut down your boy Dre? And can they do it with JMO and company, where potentially KCP could get an upset?
All right, but V1 versus T1.
Oof. Zelsis is back.
This is really hard. Yeah, exactly. Because I don't know how they look with Zelsis or what their new take on the meta is, but and I don't want to overvalue what their performance was a while ago, but we haven't seen any good information recently because they've been missing Zelsis.
He's back now. Right?
Yeah,
yes, he is back now for this event. Yes, but you would, I just, it's really hard to call, but it's hard just to vote against V1, even if they haven't shown anything recently, and T1 has been improving recently, and V1, even when they qualified for this, like I'm pretty sure they lost to KCP in the previous event, and that's part of what made them end up here instead of making it all the way through to the regional finals in the first event. But I think with Zelsis back, it's hard to vote against V1 in this one, even though if they aren't totally on form, I could see it happening, but you gotta say V1's favored, I think.
So there's Zelsis back, Whippy, Penny, Vanity calling. It looks pretty good.
Mm-hmm. There's 4 teams make it through, right?
Yes.
4 go to the finals.
Winners finals and systems. The winners finals and the losers finals. Yeah.
I can see Pioneers making it through here, man. Like that bracket doesn't seem that hard for them to make top 4.
In the end, it's a toss-up for everybody.
If they beat LG, I think they make it. If they beat LG, I think they make it, right? I think the top half of the bracket is significantly harder than the bottom half.
Agreed.
I think I think V1 and Gen.G are the 2 best teams in this bracket, for sure. And dodging both of those, I think, is pretty great for you when you're on the bottom side of the bracket.
If you're looking at these top... Sorry, go ahead, Mitch.
All good. Oh, no, I was going to ask a question. I can ask it after. You go ahead. I'll try.
No, I was just going to say real quick, because if you look at these 8 teams currently playing in the close qualifiers, and Uber is asking, who do we think has this? And we're all like, if this, that, every single one of these teams, there's nobody right now that I could be confidently saying they're going to make it into the top 4, because every single one of these matchups...
Gen.G.
Okay. I could see that. TSM?
No, hell no.
Even from a lower bracket run?
Hell no's not fair. Hell no's not fair. I don't think they're making it through the upper bracket. I think it's a hell no on the upper bracket. In my opinion, the 3 teams that I really expect are Gen.G, V1, LG, and then the 4th team could literally be any of the other teams.
Yeah. But that's tough.
That is my read, and that's based on how the brackets look as well, right? That's not just my power ranking, but yeah.
I look forward to seeing how the lower bracket's going to spin out for sure. You know, if we get a Gen.G KCP matchup, there could be some spice there for sure. That's all we've got time for today, though. So I hope we've established that next week we've got some pretty insane stuff for Challengers Finals. I think in NA it kicks off on the 29th. I think EU around that sort of same time.
Yeah,
Dream,
Thursday.
Thanks for coming on the show, man. Thanks for just front-loading so much of your insight for us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always feel comfortable on a show with ranting in the title, just talking a bunch of bullshit, bro.
Vans, Mitch, good to have you on again, fam.
Thank you.
I reckon we'll have a lot to talk about next week, don't you?
Yeah, we got it coming up this weekend.
Thanks, yo.
Got some casting to do this weekend. We'll see what happens next week.
Oh, you're casting, Vans? They finally met your
very
high day rate?
Finally. They were like, yo.
I mean, Mitch last, but he's joined the Bad Moon Talent Gravy Train as well. I'm telling you, mate. We don't come cheap. Yeah. Ask the guys at DNP.
Yeah.
Listen. All right, everybody. Great to be on the show again. We'll see you next Tuesday. We've got a lot to break down. Of course, the Challengers Finals will have already been held. We'll be diving into all that action. Until then, though, enjoy the Valorant coming up this week. It's a great time to be a fan and a viewer, and we'll see you on Tuesday.